Namaste to all of you. A very warm welcome to this evening's Zoom call. Like we have been doing, we've been privileged to have, very respectable speakers on every day we had. And today we have Sree Iyer ji. I would just tell the protocols before I introduce him formally. He's no stranger to any of you. I'm sure most of you are following his channel. But then as the protocol, at least for the people who are new, my mic and Sree Iyer ji's mics, both are will be unmuted, but whereas the rest of them all would be muted. That's to avoid the crosstalk or noise pollution. He would have the floor and then he would talk for 30-40 minutes. He's going to do a presentation while he's going to talk. And then post that, we will throw it open for question answer session. And as you all are aware, there is an option in the options place where you can raise a hand. There is a hand which will show up against your video. Dheeraj and I will sequentially call you. And when we call you, we will unmute your mic. And I would request again to not give a lecture, please. Stick to a question. Because everybody understands the background and Sree very much is in that field, so he knows the background. So we don't have to again tell him the background. Just ask your question. Be brief. So we will be able to accommodate more people in the question answer session. That's how the protocol goes. And friends, we are privileged to have Sree Iyer ji. He is an inventor who has 37 patents to his name in the areas of hardware, software, encryption, and software related systems and all. And of late, he has been doing a lot of work on frauds that are happening. For instance, his book on NDTV frauds is one of the bestsellers in Amazon, and that is something. It's a very well researched document. I'm not sure how many of you have really followed this entire case. Ram Jethmalani had written letters to Arun Jaitley ji, and he had also written to Chidambaram. There's a huge story behind it. Why NDTV is still not called a book is a major concern for all of us. His book is something literally, it tears apart the whole narrative which NDTV Chidambaram and the cabal tried to cover up. I would encourage all of you to kindly have a look at his book, buy the book, and then really understand how these power games happen in Delhi. His another book, Who Painted My Money White, is also doing well. You should probably look it up in Amazon and buy that as well. We all know Sree Iyer ji is more famous for the P Guru's channel that he runs, where if you're really looking at quality content, it is P Guru's. All of us follow the content in P Guru's. He brings in people from various walks of life, and there is no cacophony, there is no shouting, it's precise and it's very qualitatively to the point. Brief videos, but then it brings out real good quality content. So we are very proud to have him here. He is actually, he has a connection to Hyderabad. He did his engineering in Hyderabad. So in a sense, for all of us here, we are Hyderabad is his Gurusthana. So he has gone from here to US and he's doing very well for himself there. Welcome Sree Iyer ji, and welcome to the Telangana Hyderabad group. But this group contains a lot of people from other places as well. People from Telangana, and there are people from Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, some even calling in from US and England as well. And we also have people coming from Shillong. So it's a mix of people coming from everywhere. Welcome Sree ji, and then the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for those warm words, Giridhar ji. Namaskaram to everyone. And as we say in Hyderabad, Namaste Anna. So this is really a great privilege for me to be on Pragna Bharati to share with you some of my thoughts on the importance of money, how money evolved, and the future that many of us are trying to guess what's going to happen post-coronavirus. These are my thoughts, and I've done a fair amount of research in coming up with these thoughts. So I hope that you will find something to take away from this talk and mull it over, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any specific questions. Even after this talk, we will try and see how best I will try and see how best I can address your concerns. So at this point, if it's okay with you all, I'm going to share my screen so we can start the presentation.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right. So the talk is going to be on the future of money and currency. What you don't know can hurt you. In fact, those of you who have read my book, Who Painted My Money White, sort of, highlights this part, how, fake currency brought over a period of time into India through Kochi is really, really wrecking India's fabric right now. It is my stand and my opinion that a lot of these things that started out from Shaheen Bagh and then morphed into other protests, the funding is not coming from abroad. A lot of the money is being funded from inside. And I believe that that has all started happening from the money that came in over a period of 10 to 15 years. So if you read Who Painted My Money White, you'll get an idea of how this came in, how the thing got laundered, and it is spread all over India. It's not going to be easy to take it all out. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that thing out. So there's a lot of stuff that is going on in the background. I hope that readers are aware of the kind of challenges the current government is facing. Many people say, oh, this is now 6 years, they should do something about this. It's not so easy. The system is an entrenched one. And like I said, they're trying and they are succeeding in some cases. I'm still surprised that Mr. Prannoy Roy hasn't been put in jail. Although there is an attritional war going on against him, he seems to be going to forum, court to court, trying to escape, but I think eventually he'll run out of all these options. That's just my 2 cents on NDTV frauds. So let's talk about money. And this is something that is something that I picked up as a hobby over the last 5 or 6 years. And it grew more and more, interesting. And for full disclosure, I'm working as part of a startup company, a fintech, financial technology startup company that uses some of the techniques that I'm going to discuss in this talk. And so you know that the plumbing, the fundamentals have already been tested out and validated. And that's what I wanted to add to this thing. So here we go. So what is money? Many of us studied economics as a course, in our undergrad education. So this line you might remember, money is a matter of functions for a medium, a measure, a standard, a store. What does it mean by that? Money, when we think about money, whether it is gold coin or a silver coin or a copper coin or a rupee note or a dollar note, it performs these 4 functions. A medium by which somebody can have a transaction, a measure, how much, 100, 1,000, 2,000, so on and so forth. A standard, essentially when we say that, I want to get some dollars and there is an exchange rate and you give that exchange rate in rupees, then you get the dollar in exchange. So that is the standard. And store, you store the money in your lockers at home and bank and so on and so forth. These are the 4 fundamental functions that money performs. And it's important for us to go back and look in time as to how this money, the paper currency evolved, because today everybody in the world deals with paper currency. And it is important to look at that, because only when you look back at money, will you know what is going to happen forward. So that is how I'm approaching this topic. And I hope this is also an interesting story, by the way. Many of you may not be aware of how paper currency evolved over a period of time. So I'm going to share you this in the form of a story. So paper currency was in vogue probably as early as in the 6th century, when the Chinese used to use papers, but this was more of an official transaction. Like, for example, if there was a king and there was a regional chieftain, the king would, they would do transfers using some elaborate silk document that they would share, and they say, okay, so much money I owe you per year, that sort of stuff. But it was not for common public usage. For the common public, it was either silver coins or gold coins, or sometimes bronze coins. In fact, the word rupaya is one of the meanings of that is in Sanskrit means made of silver. So presumably the initial coins that India came out with was issued in silver. This is this is about coins part. So that just a perspective on what a rupee means. So in late 17th century, that is the time, 1684 to 1700, that's the time these formal banks were formed, Bank of England, Bank of Scotland, and so on and so forth. And it was Bank of Scotland that issued the first paper notes. And these were papers, and they essentially would use that to, fund a particular entity, and tell them that, okay, you have so much money, and then that person would open a bank account, and then that money would get into that. So limited use. And then in the United States, you had 13 states, 13 states to start with. And these states individually, each of them, they were all being ruled by England at that point of time. And they all had their own currency systems. Initially, everybody had coins, but it was not clear how much a coin fetched. So to explain this part, I will give you the story of Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was one of the founders of the United States, and he is credited with a lot of inventions, some of which that you may know. For example, how to do, how to build a chimney haystack so that whenever you burn wood to keep yourself warm. Remember those days there were no heaters. So you needed to make sure that the carbon monoxide that came out did not stay inside the house, because carbon monoxide is a deadly killer. So you needed to have a way to vent it out. So he figured out the chimney system, which everybody uses these days. That was one of his inventions. The other invention, mouth organ. So you may have seen the mouth organ. A precursor to that was called as harmonica. He invented that also. But the most important thing that he did was he figured out a way to print currency that could not be easily replicated. He was the 15th child born in a family in Boston. And he was a very precocious kid, very smart for his age. And at the age of 10, he joined his eldest brother, who was running a printing company. And he joined there as a printer's apprentice. And his elder brother used to publish, the newspaper for the local area. And this young Benjamin Franklin would see all those articles being written. This is, I'm talking about 1716, 1717 in that time frame. So all these were still British colonies, and people were, still coming over on boats to reside in the United States. Everybody was putting down roots. A lot of things happening. And he used to read all these articles, and he used to find them very shallow. So what he said was, okay, I think I can write better than this. He was like 12 or 13 at that time. So he writes his own article, very well written. And then he goes to his brother and says, I would like you to publish this. This is my article. And the brother, his elder brother is 20 years older. He doesn't think his younger brother is, smart enough to write an article of this caliber. He says, who did you copy from and put your name on? So he just kind of brushes him away. So Benjamin Franklin felt insulted that his brother is not understanding his intelligence. So then what he did is, very, very clever fellow. What he did then was, he wrote another article, but with a pseudonym, a different name. And then he made sure that the thing came in and got delivered to his elder brother. And his elder brother looks at it and he is like impressed. Here is a new author. This guy can really lay out an argument. And then not only did he do that, his brother used to have these hangouts in the evening where the local intellectuals used to hang out and talk about various things. And his brother was all praised for this fellow. Oh, I have this new author. He is so good. He's able to dissect arguments so well. And pretty soon, Benjamin Franklin started getting published in his brother's newspaper on the front page. But Benjamin Franklin knew that he couldn't progress further under his brother. He said, okay, I'm going to chart a destiny for my own. So from Boston, he decided to run away from home. He was like 17 years old. He ran away from home and he landed in Philadelphia. So in those days, if you look at the map of US, you'll understand this. It is just along the coast, East Coast. Boston is in the northern part of the United States. Philadelphia is to the south of New York and north of Washington, DC. So it took about 15 days, hop. So he lands in Philadelphia. Now, when he used to buy bread in Boston, one coin of one silver coin or one gold coin would get him one big loaf of bread. Now he comes to Philadelphia, he's extremely hungry, he wants to get some food. So what happens is he goes to the bread shop and he gives him one coin. And that guy gives him 4 loaves of bread, all this so big that he can't even carry it in his hands. He has his rucksack, and then he's holding all these 4 bread pieces in his hand, and he's trying to walk around and trying to figure out where to stay the night. And a girl watches all this stuff and laughs at him. And then, you know, they start taking the conversation, and she tells him, okay, my dad has a room upstairs that he rents out to people, and he talks him into, taking up rooms there. And eventually they got married and live happily. That's one part of the story. But the more important thing is Benjamin Franklin wants to start a printing press. So because that's all he knew. He started out in his brother's footsteps, and he wants to have his own printing press. But nobody is willing to trust this 17-year-old boy to give money in Pennsylvania. So what he does is he goes back to Boston to try and raise money from his father's friends. And they also don't think he has what it takes to run a printing press. So he comes back to Philadelphia, goes to England, spends a few years there, understands the changes in technology, what are all the new developments that happen in printing. And then he comes back a few years later again to Philadelphia. And at this point of time, an industrialist in Philadelphia sees this boy's talent, and he says, I will fund you for the printing press. So long story short, by the time Benjamin Franklin is 33, this is 1739, he is so good at printing that he starts printing the notes for the state of Philadelphia. These notes, I'm going to show you a picture of the 1739 10 shilling note. And you can see that. I hope you guys can see the bill. So it says 15 shillings. And this is one of the first notes ever printed. And it is, if you can look at the right bottom, he says printed by B. Franklin. And more importantly, you can see on the right-hand side, it says, if you counterfeit this note, you will be killed. Counterfeit is death. To counterfeit is death. That was the kind of laws that prevailed in those days. You couldn't counterfeit. But more importantly, he had put enough safeguards in the currency that people could not counterfeit it easily. So once one state picked it up, many of the other 13 states started using his press for printing their own paper currency. And this is the one that started the paper currency for public distribution. From that point forward, people started using paper currency. Okay, so now let's move back to the United Kingdom, because United Kingdom was one of the premier countries by the time they had established colonies in many places. And what they did was they said that in 1714, they decided that we are going to print notes based on the value of gold. In other words, they were pegging their notes to a known asset, which was gold. And to fix that relationship, at that time, the master of the mint was the inventor, Sir Isaac Newton. And they said that we are going to have the value such that it will be 4.25 pounds per ounce of gold. For those of you who don't know what an ounce is 28 grams in our normal weight. So an ounce of, so that was the reference they had. And in 1800, Germany also pegged its currency to gold. So between UK and Germany, these were the fastest growing empires at that point of time. So then everybody else started pegging their currencies to gold, and therefore it was possible to have international trade where you could go from one country to another because everything was pegged to a particular known value, which was gold. You could do transfers. This is how the initial foreign currency exchanges used to happen. Now, let's fast forward 100 years. In 1914, the First World War started, and the United Kingdom had to print a lot of money to fund the war effort. So what they had to do was they had to take the pound off of the gold standard. They said that they will bring it back, but at that point, they took it off, and you can read a lot of stories about this, so how various colonies dealt with it. South Africa had to scramble. Many people in those days also, there was corruption. Many people who knew this beforehand essentially made use of, like if you had a gold mine stock, and if you knew that the currency was going off of the gold standard, you first sold the gold stock, because gold was worthless after that, or at least for some time. So a lot of these things happened. And in 1925, Churchill restored the peg back to the gold. And he said, at that time, he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is the finance minister for England. And he pegged it back, not exactly at 4.70, but at 4.86, close enough. And then in 10, 15 years, World War II started. The pound had again dropped. It came down to $4. So by the time, the dollar had started rising in eminence. Why? Because the United Kingdom and France could not have won First World War if it was not for the help rendered by United States. By the time United States had come into its own, it was the biggest industrialized country. At 1900, by the way, it was Germany, but First World War, Germany got completely decimated industrial-wise, and they were back to, break down to completely, they were totally ruined, and they had to pull themselves back up. And that is where the nationalism and the rise of Hitler happened. Anyway, so by World War II, the pound had dropped to $4 a pound. At the highest, it was $5 a pound. So you can see a 25% sharp decline. Today, if you look at the exchange rate, 1 pound is only $1.25. So you can see relatively between the pound and the dollar has stayed more or less the same, and which is why it is a reference of the world, and everybody else has been declining with respect to the dollar. So as the Second World War was winding down, they knew by 1944 that Hitler will surrender and Japan will lose, and so on and so forth. In a small town called Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, all the Allied forces, not Japan, not Germany, but the rest of the people, they all agreed to some things. They said, post-World War, we are all going to attach our currency to the US dollar. The US dollar became the standard instead of gold. So till that point, there was always this mention or thought in terms of what all the currency should be pegged to as being that of gold. And this is going to become important. That's why I keep saying this gold standard. And in fact, you know that what is the gold standard? That was an expression that you used to use. It was that, because gold never goes bad over time. Silver will oxidize, but gold does not. Gold stays the same for hundreds and hundreds of years. So in that agreement in 1944, it was agreed that all the countries' currencies would be pegged to the US dollar, and the US dollar in turn would be pegged to the gold. Because at that time, US claimed that it had 75% of all the gold in the world. There's a place called Fort Knox, K-N-O-X. It is somewhere in Nevada, I think. And that's where most of the gold of United States is stored. In fact, there's a James Bond movie about this where the villain tries to rob that fort. You can watch that if you want to get a little bit more perspective on this. But 1944, 44 countries attended it. Of course, it didn't have Japan and Germany at that time. But here is how the thing went down. They said that they would maintain, all the central banks agreed that they will maintain a fixed exchange rate between their currency and the US dollar, and that $1 would be pegged at 1/35th of an ounce. Don't ask me why it's such a weird number, but that's what they came up with based on the situation of the cost of extracting gold and so on and so forth. Now, 1 ounce, like I said, is 28 grams. So you can loosely say $1 was 1 gram. 1 gram of gold was equivalent to 1 gram of gold. Simple numbers, right? And that's the time when they created the IMF and the World Bank. Those two entities were created because these were the banks, international banks, that would lend money to these countries who were members of this agreement. And then who created all this? Some of the most famous names in economics: John Maynard Keynes, who was the advisor to the British Treasury, and Harry Dexter White. He was the chief international economist at the US Treasury. They were the ones who came up with these numbers, with these ratios, and so on and so forth. So after the World War, Japan and Germany also were resurrected to some extent by United States. And in 1955, it gives you an idea of how $1 translated to various currencies. So if you look at it, UK was at 0.357. That's about $3 to a pound. And everybody else, you can get a relative idea of how the numbers were. Now, how did Indian rupee fare post-independence? So what India did was, India had tied its currency to the British pound. At 1927 to 1966, 39 years, India's currency was tied to the British pound. It was 1 pound was equal to 13 rupees. Okay. At the time of independence, 1 pound was equal to approximately $4 US, which goes to say that in 1947, Indian rupee, it was $1 US was equal to 3 Indian rupees. Now, what used to happen was, because India helped Britain in the Second World War, at the time of independence, Britain agreed that it will pay the money owed to India for having helped in the effort of Second World War, a certain amount of money every year. That money used to come in, like clockwork, and that's what was used by Nehru to do all the 5-year plans. Unfortunately, Nehru's socialism dream didn't stop there. He wanted to socialize everything. He took out the resources from agriculture and put them into industry. And then these are the modern temples, a lot of flowery speeches and so on and so forth. But more important thing was, he was borrowing a lot of money, even though the rate was pegged to the British pound. He was borrowing a lot of money, and he was running up a lot of debt. Not only that, in 1959, many Gulf countries, those are now oil-rich kingdoms like Oman, Qatar, Dubai, even East African countries, they all used to use India's rupee, called as the Gulf rupee. It was the same as Indian rupee at that time, the value 1:1. And that was the currency that was used by Gulf countries. That is the kind of standard and prestige that India had. But in 1966, India devalued its currency. And when that happened, Mrs. Indira Gandhi was, I think she was the prime minister at that time, and India stopped printing this Gulf rupee, and all these countries, started either publishing their own currency, or they went and pegged it to the US dollar. And that's how slowly US dollar started becoming important. And then once Saudi Arabia said that, okay, we are going to use US dollar for selling our oil and purchasing oil from, and everybody else was forced to adopt the dollar as the currency for buying petrol. And it stands true even today. You have something called the petrol exchange. When India goes and buys petrol from like Iran or other countries, let's take Iran out of it's a special case. If it's buying from Qatar or Oman or Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia, it has to pay in dollars, which is why our balance of payments, our foreign exchange reserve is so critical. Always look at that, because that's what you need to buy the biggest import that India has to have. But with Iran, India tried a slightly different agreement in 2015 when Iran was allowed to rejoin. It was a good thing for India, because India could build infrastructure for Iran. In exchange for that, Iran was going to give us oil. So it was a rupee-based agreement. Very few countries after this 1966 thing were willing to accept rupees for their oil. But Iran was happy to do so, because their economy was ruined. Their installations were all old. They needed to be upgraded. But the good news was, Iran puts out a crude called sweet crude, which is very easy for Indian refineries to refine. So it was a good win-win situation. Unfortunately, Trump came along and nixed that deal 2 years later. And since then, now India is not in the same position as it was before. Unfortunately, India is losing ground and China is gaining ground with Iran, which is actually not good, but that's a debate for a different day and different time. Okay, now what happened after that? 1944, we said that Bretton Woods was agreed upon, US was going to become the dollar, right? But what had happened was, through the 60s, US went through a period of what is called a stagnation and inflation. Stagnation in terms of growth, and inflation in terms of the same things costing more and more. So what happened was, people started getting afraid, and they would go to the bank and they would say, here is $100. I want to exchange it for gold, because the gold was still, I think at that point, Nixon had it pegged at 1/38 of an ounce or something like that. So a slight decline, but they were going to, so people in United States were all going back and saying, okay, I don't want to keep dollars in my home, I'm going to keep gold coins. So there was a fear that the gold in Fort Knox would disappear if this was not stopped. So Nixon promptly took the dollar off of the gold standard. So essentially in 1971, there was no asset against which the currency was pegged. So once the US dollar went off of that, because all the other world currencies are tied to the US dollar, nobody needed to have any qualms about having to peg their currency against one asset. So essentially it is a piece of paper. See, if you look at any currency, right, it says there, the governor of the Reserve Bank or the equivalent bank will say, I promise to pay the bearer of this so many rupees. That's what it is. It's like a promissory note. And because it became totally paper bound from 1971, you started seeing all these other crises, because rupee or dollar or any form of money is a fundamental bulwark on top of which everything, the world economy is constructed. If you break that, everything else breaks down. So let's look at how the US dollar to Indian rupee relationship was. In 1971, remember in 1947, it was 3 rupees to a US dollar. In 25 years, it had just slid to 7.5 rupees. In fact, when I came to US as a student in 1985, I think, it was 13 rupees to a dollar, 1985. And then it started really going down very, very fast. And interestingly, India never made its money, its currency floating. So what it means is India's rupee does not reflect a strength of its imports versus exports. If you want to have a fully convertible currency, what that means is at any time you can go to any bank and say, okay, I have 100 rupee note here. I would like to exchange it for pound or for euro or for dollar, anything, and they should be able to give you based on that day's exchange rate. Unfortunately, India does not have that yet. India still, if you want to convert from Indian rupee to any foreign currency, you need to get prior permission from RBI. So outbound is always taken care of. They are very careful about that. And why are they careful about that? It goes back to the fact that India needs to import crude using dollar. This dollar meant dependence on the dollar is really very important. And but for unknown reason, I don't know why India did this basket of currencies, because this basket of currencies has an inherent problem. What is the inherent problem? If you ask anyone in India, what is the formula by which the India's exchange rate, like today it's like 76.5, 76 rupees and 50 paisa per US dollar. How did you arrive at that number? Nobody knows it. And this is something that is carefully kept away secretly in the finance ministry. And I've talked to many finance officials. For some reason, nobody wants to tell me what that formula is. How much of euro, how much of US dollar, how much of pound, how much of yen, how much of this, how much of that goes into this khichdi. And then we come out with this magic number called 76 rupees. Long story short, the philosophy in the Babus in financial ministry is that India should always let its rupee slowly dilute against the dollar. And this is given as an excuse for helping the exports of the industry of India. They're saying that the exporters will have it difficult if India's rupee is made fully convertible, because if India's rupee starts appreciating, then the exporters will not know how to make a product more competitively. In other words, the finance ministry is giving a check to all the exporters in India saying, well, you don't need to make your processes more efficient, even though you've been doing this again and again over years. Instead, we'll make sure that you will always stay competitive. So worst way to encourage competition. And this has really come to hurt us, because if you look at any of the big exporters of software from India, why is it that none of them have come out with the products that compete with the likes of Google or Facebook or anything? The reason is India is perfectly happy being the maintainer of software for all these countries. They don't want to think about what do I do? What do I have to do to come up with the next generation software? I'm very pleased that there are a few standouts in this. There's something called Zoho, Z-O-H-O, which is all done inside India. It's a very good software. It's got so very good market acceptance. So it's not that, it can't be done. It's just that for the number of software engineers that are employed in India, the amount of software products that India can proudly say, okay, this is mine, that is still not there. And I don't know when it's going to happen. Although I must say that in pharma, India has made a much better name for itself. Reddy's Labs and few other companies, they've really, really stuck it out there in pharma industry, and they are a name to reckon with. There's also another rumor that's doing the rounds that there is some collusion to allow the rupee to keep on diluting against the dollar. And there have been whistleblower letters to SEBI and RBI. RBI hasn't done anything about it. And this is another thing that actually weakens India. Why does it weaken India? Why it weakens India is the exchange rate, when it becomes more diluted, the common man is paying more. Well, how is he paying more? He pays more for the petrol. When petrol cost is more, it also has to go with the same costs are also showing up in diesel, kerosene, and so on. And that is the direct cost. There's also an indirect cost. Guess what happens? Everything that gets transported to you from the source, like for example, if you're getting rice from a particular state, or you're getting tuar dal from another different state, all these things have what is called as transport expenses. Because the underlying value of petrol goes up, these transport expenses go up, and that gets reflected in the price of the product. They are not going to take it and eat it. They are going to pass it on to the consumer. So the consumer is getting progressively poorer. And this is one of the problems that, India doesn't want to look at. And I don't know why, because we are so sure that our economy India's economy resembles that of the Western economies, where they have to have a certain amount of inflation. It's not true. India's economy is slightly different. And the truth of how India's economy should be behaving is more characterized in works from Dr. Swami and Professor R. Vaidyanathan. They have done a much better research. They have much better numbers. In fact, Mr. Gurumurthy also has these things. They have a much better feel and pulse for what India should be doing. But even in this regime, I'm afraid nobody has had the guts to take this thing on and say, I'm going to look at the way rupee is valued abroad in a different way. India can do it. Now is a good time to do it, because every country is looking for their own problem. They're trying to solve their own problems. Nobody's paying attention to what's happening outside of their country. If there is any change that can be brought about, now is the time. Okay. So I'm almost, let's see, I am about halfway into my presentation now. And how are we doing, Girdharji? It's okay?
I mean, I told you, there is no time limit. I mean, you can go on. Don't worry about it.
Okay, okay. Well, as long as people are not logging off, I'm happy.
Well, that's fine. That. I mean, see, there will be people who will hop on and hop off. Okay, but there will be people who are dedicated. They will hang on. Okay. Right? It doesn't matter. Okay. See, it's the content, and even after you're done with your presentation, this is available on the social media. Sure. So it's going to reach. The content is more important. People, we have very dedicated members who are coming in. Some may hop off and hop in. That's okay. Don't worry about it.
All right. Okay.
You go on.
All right. So what is happening because of this virus? This virus has had major impact on many countries. In fact, US was a little late out of the gate, but then they have been reacting very quickly. So far, they have released about $3 trillion into the system, 3 trillion. And that is finding its way through various industries. It's helping small businesses, it's helping large businesses. For example, the airlines industry is completely decimated right now because nobody wants to fly anymore. And they, in fact, were running empty flights for some time, and they even stopped that. Now everybody is waiting to see when the lockdown will be lifted before they start resuming normal business. So US plans to print up to 6 trillion. Today, the size of the US economy is around 20 trillion, which means US is printing 30% of the money in circulation today. And if you apply the same numbers to India, India needs to, let's say India doesn't print any new money. Because US is diluting its currency by 30%, will the Indian rupee appreciate by 30%? No, because 2008 said so. In 2008, we saw that India's rupee, or neither India's rupee nor any other currency, appreciated against the dollar. It is just that the reference got diluted. Everybody else were happy with the new reference. And one person who dared to stand up and ask this question lost his job. It was the president of France. So, that's an interesting story there. So what is going to happen? US dollar is continuing to be the standard, and it has infused so much more money into the system to try and kickstart its economy. Now, if India were to apply the same yardstick, today, India's economy is around 2.5 trillion. We all know that, right? So $0.75 trillion it has to print in rupees. At today's exchange rate of 76, that works out to approximately 5.73 lakh crores. India has to print money and put that in the system. Now, if India does that like the way it has been doing in the past, it will just have a runaway inflation, and that would force India to dilute its rupee to 100 rupees to a US dollar. Now, Modi hasn't done that. Perhaps you can understand why he has not done it, because he may be concerned that by printing new notes and just giving it in the hands of people, it's not going to really solve the problem, because we have now developed bad habits. If you ask me, many people, I'm not talking about the middle class is more careful about where their money is spent, but the bulk of the lower middle class have developed bad habits, drugs, liquor, and so on and so forth. And that's where the discretionary money goes. And we have to figure out a way to make sure the money goes where it ought to be going. So what I have done is, from here on forward, this is now moving forward, because now we have reached today, we are going to move forward. How are we going to do it? So I'm going to propose some new methods by which India can print new notes, and it can also keep the exchange rate at now, or even probably improve. So that way what happens is, India is well prepared to handle the future. Also, it is kind of lagging a little bit behind in terms of what its technology is in China and US. India is number 3 in terms of the size of economy if you think about purchasing power parity. And we should always think about purchasing power parity, because that's what a common man in each country deals with on a day-to-day basis. Don't look at the size in US dollars and then say, okay, India is 5th or 6th. That's not relevant. For day-to-day lives, PPP is relevant. India is the 3rd largest, which is why when India made a decision to stop buying palm oil from Malaysia, what happened? Mahathir Mohamad lost his job in Malaysia. Now they are begging to India to just please buy our palm oil. That is the kind of power that India has, because you have such a huge buying power now, because so many people need these things. If India as much as sneezes, everybody else catches a cold. That is the power India has. Now, how do you harness this power for the betterment of India first and then the world? You always have to look for the country first. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm putting my blinkers here on, saying, if I were part of the Indian decision-making system, what would I do? And this is what my suggestion is. This is essentially, think of it like an engineer, technician, technologist looking at a problem or a system, which is a financial system, and coming up with remedies. So what's the best way to put new money in? You can build infrastructure projects. In fact, one of the standout ministers in the current NDA government from 2014 up until now has been Nitin Gadkari, because he has been finding new ways to get the infrastructure going. New roads, also having river navigation, trying to use the long coastline of India to transport goods and people and so on and so forth. So that is, still kind of one way to solve the problem. But there are also other things that India can do, because India is running up against a huge river water resource problem. Today, if you look at, I used to live in Bangalore, and every time I went there and stayed for 3-4 weeks, I would see that the Bangalore city, for the most part, relies on tanker-based water. I mean, tankers come in and deliver water. There is, if you open the local tap, there is no bharosa that you are going to get water every day. How long will this thing last? What happens when the reservoirs from where the water is being trucked to Bangalore stop having water? 2 droughts, we're done. So there is a huge resource shortage issue building up. Then you have this every season fight with Tamil Nadu, where Tamil Nadu says, oh, we need our water, Kaveri water, and Karnataka says, we don't have ourselves, what are we going to give you? All these things, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse because India is still growing. We are creating an Australia, probably 2 Australias now every day. So that is the rate at which India is growing population-wise. So something has to be found. So we have to take a look at how things have become so bad. One of the things that India used to have, it used to have a wealth of lakes. And by I'd say 1815 or so, by which time the British East India Company had more or less taken control of India. At that time, for every 2 villages, there were 3 reservoirs. That was the amount of water that India had. It had planned out, completely decentralized. Everybody was locally self-sufficient. Everybody grew products. And most of the time, even their currency wasn't even used. They used to use barter. I produced good, you produced peanuts, you exchange good for peanuts. I had peanuts with goods to eat, and you had good to sweeten your peanut stuff. That's how things used to work. Now, when the British came and looked at this, they said one of the ways that we need to control India is to centralize the water as a resource. A lot of these things where the excess water from the rivers would go off and get into storage tanks, all that stuff was disrupted. India needs to go back, because if they do the work, these reservoir lakes where whenever there was excess water, like because of floods, that could go and get stored. It performs 2 functions. One is you have all the lakes are going to have fresh water. The second function is you can also figure out where the aquifers are. Aquifers are hidden underground reservoirs of water where also you can store the water. So today, if you look at anybody who wants to put a new borewell, you're probably going in cities, at least you're going probably 400, 500, I don't know how far deep you're going. 20, 30 years ago, you could strike water at 100 meters. So the depth to which you have to go to is increasing every day. It's mainly because of the fact that the water table underneath the ground is depleting. But there has to be a way to bring it back up. And it has to be done in an organized manner. All these things are available, some amount of work. And there was a plan by Dr. K.L. Rao, I think it came in the 60s, on how to realistically link rivers. That may be a second stage. The first stage is to use the rivers and have a gate-based system whereby anytime there's an excess water flowing down, you don't let that water flow to the sea. Instead, you figure out a way to divert the water into local lakes along the path of the river. That would help. Like, for example, I remember in the 80s, Bangalore had so many lakes. Now you can count on your fingers how many lakes are there in Bangalore. Same with Hyderabad, lot more lakes now, lot fewer lakes. We've just, covered them up with mud and started building high rises. But anytime there is excess rainfall, all these things start secreting water because there used to be a lake there before, and that causes innumerable number of problems. So the blueprint on how to manage your water resources is already there. You just have to study a system that has been implemented in the state of California. By the way, California, lengthwise, it's about, I would say, half of that of India, because it's a very, very long state, and it's also 1/3 wide. So it's a fairly big state. And what California has done is it has figured out a way to manage its water. It can pump water from north to south or south to north, because it's such a big state. Sometimes you can have a drought in the southern part of California and the north could be fine, or vice versa. So they have a way to let the water be pumped from one direction, from either direction they can pump the water. Something like that needs to be done, because no one should be deprived of this fundamental resource called water. Water is a fundamental thing that defines our lifestyle. And when we think about, okay, I can survive with bottled water, even bottled water has a, limit. You don't, if your population keeps growing and we don't have new ways to supplant the existing resources of water, at some point things are going to run out. Now, the next thing. So infrastructure spending that will let the world know that, okay, India is serious about getting its infrastructure. So that means that if you spend good money in infrastructure, you would be able to still hold the current exchange rate. Another way to do it is to phase out the paper currency. And paper currency has two problems, in my opinion. One is that India has been finding it very difficult to keep the fake currencies out. In fact, that is the main reason why I wrote my book, Who Painted My Money White, because it talks about what happens when a lot of fake currency enters the system. Second thing is, because it's all on paper, you can't track how money is being moved around. It is moving outside the banking system. So when things like money laundering happens, the government is almost always in reactive mode. It is not able to proactively try to stop funding a particular riot that might happen 3 days from now because money is being sent there. So one way to solve this problem is to devise a method called as prepaid debit card. And what a prepaid debit card is, and this has been also used in US, so the model already functions. In the debit card, what happens is the debit card has a significant amount of the money defined for a particular function. For example, if the government is giving 10,000 rupees as on a prepaid debit card, the government can say that out of that 10,000, 5,000 can go towards fertilizer cost, 2,000 towards seeds, and 3,000 for maybe tractor or something like that. I'm just giving you an example because this prepaid debit card can then track and make sure that the money is only going for the purpose it is intended for, not for anything else. For this, there is something called as blockchain technology that can be used, and that will give an exact indication to the government that yes, Ramudu has taken this 10,000 rupees and he did do exactly what we told him to do, because the fertilizer company has registered a sale. And in fact, you can even track the exact amount of money, including the serial numbers that went, and say, okay, this part of the money that was given to Ramlu has gone to this particular fertilizer company. And then the money will come back from the fertilizer company to somewhere else. The point here is that tracing the money, tracking the money, and purposing the money for the purpose that it was intended for is met. Because if you don't do that, and if you just give rupees away, guess what happens? Many people will just go to the local toddy shop and blow it on that. That is not the intent, because if you do that, it's not going to improve the livelihood of the common man. You have to make sure at this point in time that every rupee that India prints, every paisa that India prints is used for the purpose it is intended for. Because now everything is stopped, there are, with some simple adjustments, India can put this forward, because there are some states who are already doing things similar to this. It's just that they need to add the underlying technology called as blockchain technology. It's also called as immutable distributed ledger technology, or IDLT. I'm going to show you a couple of graphics here to explain this a little bit more clearly. So government wants to pay subsidy to the farmer. I'm looking at the lower, bottom lower corner. Government wants to pay subsidy to the farmer. So it loads up a prepaid debit card where it says that, like I said, it says that I'm going to put so much towards medical expenses, so much for the seeds, and so much for the fertilizers. And then it sends that debit card to the farmer. Now, because it is all on the blockchain, the IDLT tracks the loan amount, and it can tell the government that the money is being spent for the purpose it is intended for. In fact, sometimes the government can even mandate that that debit card will only work at the fertilizer shop or the medical shop or the seed shop. You can even get to that kind of granularity, because you need to make sure that there is zero wastage. I mean, the initiative by Modi in 2015 to do Jan Dhan Yojana, where he was trying to make everybody open a bank account. It's a huge plus, because that's going to help people drive this thing. Everybody has to have a bank account. And with that, you know, all this stuff, what I'm drawing here in this picture can be managed by just using your smartphone, either Android or iPhone. Everything, the app will be right here. They'll know exactly what is going on. So you don't even have to go to a bank to do anything. the money that you have in your debit card will be reflected on your smartphone, and you can use that to direct it. You can find out where things are going. Everything can be done, managed using that. So this is in the case of government giving money to the needy. Now, let's say, how does this work for, let's say, medium and small and medium enterprises? They need money. Now, instead of just giving them money, like, okay, your size is so much, I'll give you so much money. Why not the government use this in a more creative, productive manner? And that's what I'm suggesting in the next slide. And for that, before we go there, I want to kind of introduce us to what is cryptocurrency. Recently, the Supreme Court said that cryptocurrency can be used in India. And by the way, anybody today, when they say cryptocurrency, they immediately associate that with Bitcoin. Now, I'm not talking about Bitcoin here because Bitcoin is probably the wrong model to use, especially on a nationwide rollout. And the reason for that has to do with Bitcoin. Giridharji, you want me to spend a couple of minutes explaining Bitcoin?
Yeah, definitely. Bitcoin is what scared the government of India to first ban this, and then the Supreme Court had to unlock it. Yeah.
Yes. So what Bitcoin did, this is a story again, guys. We are going from the main story to a side story. Bitcoin anonymized currency, meaning that you had the money, but by looking at the money, no government could figure out who owned the money. And why Bitcoin became popular has to do with how counterfeited, drug money was being used. Now you go back to 1970s or 80s, that's when drugs became a huge problem in the United States. It was produced in Colombia and then in neighboring countries, and then it would find its way into United States. So drugs come in, the dollars are bought at the street, and then the dollars had to go back. Now, this is where the government of the United States started cracking down. They would try to trace where the money goes out. So the drug smugglers had to figure out alternate ways to get paid for the drugs that they were selling. Now, those of you who have Netflix, you can watch, there are a couple of series there, Narcos and Narcos Mexico. Watch Narcos first and then Narcos Mexico to get a perspective on this drug menace. It's important to know that because that single thing influenced a lot of the way the monetary system evolved from the 1970s up until today. So when the drug makers figured out that they were being tracked for currency movement, because the currency had to come back to the drug manufacturer, right? That's how he got paid. And the US could follow the money and they could catch the drug smugglers. So they needed to put some distance between their money and themselves. That's how the tax havens happened. First step was Panama. That was the first country that had tax havens, and then all the Caribbean islands and rest. And once this took root, the tax havens started getting used for corruption money, slush money. Dictators who were running countries, they wanted to park their money, and so on and so forth. But the root cause for that was this. So going back to the smugglers. So after money started getting into tax havens, the US again could track the money into tax havens, and they could use software to figure out that it is the money of this particular drug lord that has gone to this bank account. And then what they would do is they would freeze the assets of that bank, and then the problem could again resurface. So the drug smugglers wanted to find a different way to get around this limitation. What they did was then they would say, okay, you don't pay me in dollars. Instead, you find a very expensive painting like a Picasso or a Monet, and you pay for me in using that painting. Now, here is an interesting thing. In US, especially in New York City, you can put foreign-owned paintings in a warehouse, and the US Customs or US government cannot touch it. Some law is there like that. So what they would do was they would get paid for their drugs in paintings, and those paintings would be warehoused here. And they would say, okay, then my money is safe there. But then, with time, US started finding ways to catch that also. So the drug smugglers needed a different way to get paid and also not get associated with the ownership of the money. And that's where Bitcoin entered. This was, at its crudest form, Bitcoin is just a bunch of numbers. Okay. Now, what happened was a mathematician came up with a formula which devised that if you do a particular process, you will get up to a maximum of 6 million Bitcoins. I'm not sure about the exact number, but just assume that it's some million, but it's a fixed number. And what happens is the way these are acknowledged as a Bitcoin is that anybody, if you have 10 computers, you can start too. What is called as mining operation. So you are given a certain starting point, and then you run through a lot of processes, and then you are sure that, okay, now I have a new Bitcoin that has not been assigned or used to anybody else. Then what you say is, okay, I claim this Bitcoin. And then there is a bunch of umpires, if you will, like 100 people across the world who will all look at that. And then a majority of them have to agree saying that, yes, this is a unique Bitcoin. And then after that, you own that Bitcoin. And then because Bitcoin is a traded commodity in the market, as that value of the Bitcoin in dollars for that day, you got that much money. Because if you wanted to sell that thing in the Bitcoin exchange, you could give that thing one drug smuggler or some other guy who doesn't want his money to be divulged, will take that and give you the money. So the problem with why RBI banned this was that they would know that you are doing Bitcoin mining, but they wouldn't know which exact Bitcoins you would have. And once you monetized it, afterwards, you just have to pay the taxes on that money. You can't be held responsible. So a bunch of people in Surat always has all these innovative methods because that's the diamond industry. That's where most of the money gets made in India. But those guys were very enterprising. They were using this to, start Bitcoin-based operations. And that's where the problem started. Now, turns out that Bitcoin is an application based on a technology called as blockchain. I think I referred to this 2 slides back. What blockchain does is blockchain establishes ownership at every given point. Because Bitcoin was inherently and intentionally democratized, you don't know who owns it. But if you design it in such a way that the person who's releasing the blockchain owns can find out how and where it is traversing, then it is the best way to track where the money is going. And that is called as permissioned blockchain. The case of Bitcoin is an unpermissioned blockchain, meaning anybody can use it. Now, just one more thing about Bitcoin. Why is the Bitcoin value going up over time? It is because that there is a limit, 6 million coins. And as the number of coins comes out more and more, you have to do more and more processing to get the remaining Bitcoins. And therefore, since people know that there is only a limited amount of Bitcoins left, the value of the Bitcoin is going up. That's it. However, Bitcoin is facing a lot of competition from many other competing things called color coin, this coin, that coin, and so on. So therefore, this thing has lost its charm now. People have to figure out a new way. By the way, the FBI did crack the Bitcoin also. There was a company called Silk Road Exchange operated out of, I think, Thailand, I think. And they cracked that, and they did catch a couple of drug smugglers, and therefore using Bitcoin to get paid for illegal operations has also come down drastically now. So there is this is a cat and mouse, Tom and Jerry game going on. Each side tries to get smarter, tries to become better at what they are doing. So now, how do you use this technology now that the Supreme Court has said that cryptocurrency can be used in India, wherein you want to make sure that whatever funding that you're going to print a lot of notes. Remember, I told you that a few slides back, India has to print a lot of notes. What it needs to do is to make sure that the money that is printed is directed at the place where it can give the maximum return. That's how you're going to get the 10% growth. India has a lot of problems, by the way. The population explosion requires that India grow at minimum 10 to 12%. This quarter or the next quarter, I'm afraid India will be negative growth. So you are coming and you are picking yourself up from the very bottom, and then you have to soar up. The only option you have left in you is to print more money. And you want to print that thing in a more responsible way. And these are some of the ways to do that. Okay, so supposing MSMEs want to raise capital, how does one accomplish that? So what I'm proposing is that the RBI define something similar to Bitcoin called as stable coin. By the way, a stable coin is different from Bitcoin in that a stable coin is digital currency, but it is backed by an asset that is tangible, that is something that everybody can agree and saying, yes, this asset is something that I can accept as a value for this. And remember, we talked about gold. Supposing the RBI were to release the stable coin, and it can say that the gold is the first asset against which a stable coin is going to be pegged to, and the coin value will never change. It will always be the same thing. When it has more gold, it can print more coins, but it's always a one-to-one relationship. That way, what happens is this currency, which is not rupee, but it's a stable coin, it's a currency. And I'm going to show in the next few slides how this currency can be used to direct funding at the place where it has to be done the most effective. So first thing India needs to do is figure out how much gold it really has, because you cannot define an all India standard unless you know how much gold you have. And the government may have some figures based on the customs duties paid on the gold imports. It also knows how much gold is being produced in Kolar goldfields. And these are not much. It is, in my opinion, and I could be wrong about this, it's 3 to 4 times more money more gold gets smuggled into India. Remember this, the wealth of Dubai today is mostly because of the smuggling activity that Dubai did to bring stuff that was, considered banned in India. And that is how Dubai has become as important as what it is today. And so it's my opinion that India has at least 3 to 4 times more gold than what the RBI thinks it has. So to be able to come up with a stable coin principle, you need to have a very, very accurate, or at least as accurate as possible, how much gold exists in India. Every family has gold. Our grandmothers, our forefathers are very, very smart. They realized that the best asset that their daughter who was going to go to a new house could have was gold, which is why we all did all this zevar. We gave, as part of the dowry, we gave them gold, because here is the other thing. Gold is something that the lady could wear. So the husband, if he was a spendthrift, would not run away with money. So also there's a lot of thought that went into this. And they knew that gold never ever goes bad. It stays the same. So Indian households have a lot of gold today. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we can find out a way to see how this gold can be used to help people raise money? So here is a method where what you can do is, today there are this scanner, just, you all saw this thing that people are holding on your forehead to find out if you're running a fever or not, right? It's like a small gun kind of thing, where it puts on your forehead to find out if you have fever or not, for this coronavirus thing. So you have a device called XRF scanner. It is similar to that. You can put that against an existing jewelry, and it will tell you how much of gold it has, how much copper it has, all the impurities. The moment of truth for all your jewelry you can find out. So banks can have the scanner, and then let's say if you want to get a loan for some amount, you can show your gold, and then the bank can tell you what is the value you have as an asset. Now, it's up to you whether you want to use that gold, put it in the locker of the bank and get money for your business, or you can take it back, you know how much money you have. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is I know that the government has to give money to MSMEs. What if the government says that I will give, for 100 rupees that you are putting in the form of gold that you own in your house as collateral, government will kick in 50 rupees, 50%. This is just a number. It could be more or less. I'm giving you 50%, and I'm giving it to at, like, say, 5% interest rate. So what happens is your 100 rupee loan is going to be given at 5% interest rate. And to just sweeten the deal, I'm giving you extra 50. So you are getting 150 to start with. You only pay me back for the 100 that you are loaning. The 50 is a gift to you. The reason for that is that you need to unclog the system. You need to be bootstrapped and kickstart it. By doing this, what happens is the gold remains in the bank in the same form. The bank is not going to touch it. It's not going to change the gold chain that you had. It's going to be exactly the same thing. Think of it like bank opening a locker for you at its expense, keeping it in that locker. Once you pay back your loan amount, you get back your jewelry. Okay, so this is the idea here. Now, what it does is, as this the data about more and more gold comes in, the banks that are giving you the loan can tell RBI, okay, I've got so much gold deposits here. This group of my customers have so much gold. So what happens in that situation is the RBI gets a better and better valuation on how much it can issue the stable coin for. Stable coin is not something that's going to happen today, but we need to figure out a way to find out the real extent of the gold that India has. And there is a reason why I'm saying this. It'll become apparent in a couple of slides from now. So assume this is a drawing that tells you how this happens. Somebody has gold. Now he goes to the local bank values it and then gives the equivalent in stable coin. This is mainly for the purposes of trying to make sure that two things happen. One is the RBI gets to know how much gold there is. And the other thing is that because it's a stable coin, it is on DLT, IDLT, it can track. Again, this money that is being given, because the government is pitching in 50%, right? The government can tell the user that you can only use it in 3 different ways. You can use it for education, you can use it for medicine, or you can use it for supplies. I'm just giving a simple example here. And as long as these things is where it's being used, then the government can track and make sure that there is no abuse. You have to take out that abuse completely. Nobody should be abusing the money, because this is valuable money being given one time. It has to have the maximum bang for the buck. Now, once the gold is deposited in the bank, you can see that the gold has now moved to the bank. What happens is that the borrower has a loan now. He got, for every 100 rupees, the government kicked in 50 rupees at a very low interest rate. And when the loan gets paid off, they get back the gold. So that 50% that they got, it is like a gift from the government. They don't have to pay back that money. They just have to pay back the original money, which is the 100 rupees at 5% interest rate. So this is a win-win situation. How is it a win-win? For the government, it has accomplished its goal of directing the new money at the intended purpose. For the borrower, he is suddenly getting much more money at a lower interest rate, and he can kickstart that with something that he already has. So nobody needs to go and figure out what other new asset they have to bring as collateral to the bank. That way the NPAs are not going to be a problem. There will not be an NPA, because the money that is being given is given against an asset. You always have the gold to go back to. So this way what happens is the banks get ahead. The government's intended purpose of giving the money, directing the money at the right place it's intended for gets addressed, and you get the money you want. And guess what? All this can be done by the people of India. So now let's take a look at what the scenario is going to be maybe 18 months to 24 months later. By that time, every country would have spent a lot of money on just bringing themselves back up and running. So whatever exchange rates and all these things that you had, they essentially become meaningless. So it's a moot point whether the United States dollar will still be the reference after 24 months, because China has been planning for this for a long, long time. For many years now, China, the government of China has been the biggest buyer of gold, world gold, everywhere. Wherever they can lay their hands on gold, they are buying and they are keeping it. So why are they doing that? Because today, nobody takes the yuan seriously. Remember, over a period of 30 years, the yuan's exchange rate has been fixed to a certain value of the dollar. It started out around 6 to 6.30, and only very recently it has come down to 7. 7 yuan to a US dollar. And for some strange reason, the US never forced China to devalue its currency or revalue its currency, because China is a net exporter. It exports much more than what it imports. So it's in a much stronger position than, say, compared to India. And the reason for that is this magical kingdom or a small country called Hong Kong. US always used to deal with China through Hong Kong. This is something that's historic. You have to go back to the fact that the British had a 99-year lease from China for Hong Kong, and they had to give up the lease in 1997. But in 1992, the United States and Hong Kong, the then government of Hong Kong, came into an agreement wherein they said that the Hong Kong dollar, that is not the yuan, it's something called as the Hong Kong dollar, that Hong Kong dollar would be pegged to that of the United States dollar. It's around 7.75. It is allowed to float up to 7.85, very narrow band, 7.75 to 7.85. And all the money that was directed at China from, say, let's say when they really opened up in 1990s all the way up until now, all of that used to find its way through Hong Kong. And the US was always dealing with Hong Kong dollar, and banks in Hong Kong had a restriction that they could use the Hong Kong dollar only when they had a dollar value backing it. Now, remember this thing called HSBC, that is Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation. And HSBC committed a lot of fraud in 2008 when the currency crisis hit, and they got fined big time by many, many countries. But HSBC was one of the people which was used to launder a lot of the money from China, mainland China, into the rest of the world. Now, it turns out that US can try and control China through Hong Kong. Why do I say that? Every year, the US has to have a deal that they renegotiate with Hong Kong. Remember I said 7.75 to 7.85. US says that I will allow Hong Kong dollar to exist as long as it is within this band. And this agreement on how the terms of engagement will be is renewed every year. Every year, the President of the United States can look at this deal and say, do I want this deal or do I want to change the terms of this deal? Now, you can expect that something will happen there, because if you remember, there were a lot of democracy protests in in Hong Kong, and that was something that perhaps had to do with the fact that China was trying to make the Hong Kong dollar disappear. Why does China want to do that? China wants to do that because it wants to tell the world, you want to deal with me, you have to deal with my currency, which is the yuan. It wants to eliminate the middleman called Hong Kong dollar completely out of the system. Now, to make that thing sweeter, to say that yuan is something that is serious, what China might say is, I am backing my currency with gold. So it's going back to the Bretton Woods. It's going back to the standard when everybody's currency was based on gold. So if China says that yuan is going to be backed by gold, guess what? All the countries will say, oh, maybe I should be using this instead of the US dollar, which is a paper currency now. All of a sudden, US doesn't have a way to counter that. US made it illegal for its people to have gold. Now it is not so bad, but there was a time when gold was considered illegal to have as an asset in your household. Now US does allow you to have gold, but it's in very, very small amounts. So US has what it has in its Fort Knox reserves, but US has a problem. US cannot go back and say, I will peg my currency to the gold that I have. Today, the value of 1 ounce, that is the same 28 odd grams, is I think $1,500 or something like that. So you've come a long way away from when it was $1 equal to 1 gram of gold. You've come a long way from there. So there is a problem that US has. So if US doesn't become the standard and yuan becomes the standard for the world, how will India react to that? So India has to plan for both. India has to plan for US dollar continuing to be the standard currency, and it also has to plan for a new world order wherein the yuan becomes the standard, which is why I said that the RBI needs to issue a stable coin, because that stable coin, what we are saying, is going to be backed by the gold that India has. Therefore, you would have a counter narrative to the yuan. You can say, look, I have gold too, and I can, flex my arms with the best. So this is the strategy, in my opinion. India needs to be prepared. India needs to be able to handle either ways. And more importantly, when the stable coin takes root and the investment from the government is directed correctly, you will start seeing a lot more clarity in the system. Remember, today, according to estimates of Professor R. Vaidyanathan, we are paying an extra 20 to 30% tax by way of corruption. This is invisible, but it is already built in, because if you look at many states, if you go to any government office for any permission, you have to give some money. So that is the overhead that he calculated and said that we are paying this much extra, and that is ruining our efficiencies. Once you take that thing away, your processes have become more efficient. And this is one way to make sure of that. So without sending anyone to jail, without prosecuting anybody, without getting any money from abroad, India can do all these things. And then suddenly India would have a lot more efficient processes. And the world is looking at India very curiously. India, they know that India is transparent. Why? Because India uses English. English is very easily read and understood by the rest of the business community of the world follows English. By the way, in the days of Harappan days also, there was something called as Mlecha, which is the language that they used to say for the language of business. That's how they used to transact across countries. So where are we going after this coronavirus? We are headed for very interesting times. Our lifestyles are going to change drastically. For example, we are going to have fewer parties, less eating out, more online viewing, more online transaction, and less travel, a lot less travel. Already people were complaining that people don't show up for weddings, relatives don't come for weddings. Now it's going to get even less. You might even have a normal thing where the wedding will be webcast and everybody will watch the wedding from the comfort of their homes, and there will be a new online way to show that everybody's donations for the wedding is all shown up like a big counter in front of the groom and the bride. They say, okay, this uncle is giving me so many rupees, this auntie is giving me so many tolas of gold, whatever it is. So that kind of stuff will happen. Many businesses will disappear, especially hotel, tourism. These are industries that are really, really in risk. And I believe that initially, at least, the government shouldn't put money there. It needs to figure out how to repurpose it for other things. And the most important, the best thing that I can see in this is you'll be having more family-centric lifestyle, because everybody has to cook. Children may be living in different places, but they like mom's food. Who doesn't like mom's food? So people would want to come and go back. So it is essentially going back to the dharmic way of life. The whole world is going to turn Sanatani. And for that, India didn't have to have any preachers scouring the length and breadth of the world, going and telling our lifestyle is better. All India needs to do is say, okay, follow the dharma. Bhagavad Gita says it very, very eloquently. You can follow these things and everybody can live very, very peaceful lifestyles free of stress. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. We come to the end of my presentation now, and I can start taking questions.
Thanks a lot, Sree. I think we can yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a very, very elaborate and very detailed and, very easy to understand presentation, even for a layman, somebody who doesn't know finance like me, it makes a lot of sense. Because I call myself an ex-chartered accountant. That's my profession a while back. So this makes a lot of sense. Before I really throw it open to people to ask questions, maybe you could fill in a few issues that I thought you should address.
Sure.
See, the point is we are an import heavy economy, right? And the maximum amount of imports that India is doing is, or the spending from the imports is actually happening from government sector.
Yes.
Be it oil, be it minerals, or whatever, MMTC, all these guys, coal, whatever. All the major imports are happening through the government. The strength of the Indian economy, be as it may, whatever 6%, 7%, whatever it is. And if you look at the balance sheet of India, Almost everybody says that 76 should not be the rate at which India dollar exchange should be. Probably 45 to 50 or thereabouts, 5 rupees this way or that should be the realistic figure. So the import bill is top heavy because we are spending $20, $30 more than what we should be spending, right? In the garb of trying to help the export, exporters, like what you rightly said, it is more of trying to incentivize somebody who's lazy, who doesn't want to change.
Right.
There is a degree of vested interest in the people who are taking these decisions in terms of pegging this dollar rupee value, because the large chunk of it is hidden from the public glare, because the spending is happening from the government. If it was a normal importer in a private sector, probably they'll make some noise about it. But whereas since government is spending, nobody is really probably worried about it, or they're not asking questions that should be asked. So there is a worrisome thing. So last 5-6 years, we've actually seen rupee still depreciating further rather than
appreciating,
right? So maybe you could throw some light on that. And then I'll ask you probably what next something.
Yeah. Well, I have written tomes and tomes, as a matter of fact, on this very topic. One of the things that India doesn't do or look at very closely is how it is importing its oil. See, there are private and there are public enterprises. ONGC is the public, private are Reliance and other petrochemical companies. Now, there is an allegation, and I don't have the proof to say this thing. There's an allegation that the private companies are influencing the price of petrol even at the public pumps. Like, for example, I think Indian Oil is a public pump. Reliance is a private pump. If you look at the price differential between those two in terms of per liter petrol pricing, right? It is more or less the same. And it should not be that way, because, why I say because is, at least if you look at from 2015 till now, India was getting the bulk of its crude from Iran, for which it was not paying in rupees. I mean, it was not paying in dollars, it was paying in rupees. Yeah. And therefore, in my opinion, the Indian oil price should have been significantly lesser compared to Reliance, which was getting it from Saudi Arabia and from open markets. So when the open market thing went down from, say, in 2014, it was $140 per barrel of crude. It came down to 28, and then it's slowly gone up to 50, and again, now it is down to 28, right? So 140 and 28, it is 4 times. Has your price at the petrol pump gone down 1/4? No. In fact, it didn't even go down at all. It has been more or less around 50 rupees per liter, and now it has gone up to 70 or 75. I'm just giving mota numbers. I don't go on, but something like. So what happened here? So the Modi government found that, why do you want to pass on the savings from the crude to the public? Instead, why don't we use that to repurpose it for other things like infrastructure? So that was one thing that they did knowingly. That was one part that explains why the petrol price hasn't come down at the pump. The second part, which needs to be investigated, is that anytime these private companies purchase crude, the purchasing was done not directly from place A to place B. The crude will come from, say, Saudi Arabia to Mumbai or Gujarat, but the invoice for this will go through 3 different countries and come in. Why? At every point of the way, the invoice was getting marked up 10%, 10%. All these are kickbacks. Some may be to the company, some may be to the government officials. Then they also made sure that they will still sell their petrol in the bunks in India. And for that, what they had to do, they had to make sure that Indian Oil won't lower the price. So there's a scam here. People on both sides are playing this game.
Yeah.
Okay. And this has been going on for a long time. I've shouted hoarse on this one, but there's only so many hours in a day, and there is only so much that you can chase. But this is a clear and present danger. And this goes back to what I was saying, that you should be able to, sitting in your comfort of your home, we use your smartphone and run an app saying, today the crude price is, market crude price is $26. It takes 6 months or 6 weeks for the crude to be bought and refined and coming to my petrol bunk in 6 weeks. And in 6 weeks, my cost per liter of petrol should be 45 rupees. You should have that transparency. India needs to get there. India needs to get there by two things that has to happen. One is this. The other is they have to tell how they are coming up with this exchange rate of 76. I think there's a lot of bunkum there. There are vested interests who are making money, and for them, what they have agreed to, we know that this was the allegation against Chidambaram, and I don't know if you remember in 2013, the rupee slid from 60 to 68 in just a matter of a few days.
Yeah.
And at that time, Dr. Swami had to call a press conference and said that Chidambaram is allowing people to speculate in the future of the rupee. He has got Karthi and Robert Vadra doing it. One guy was doing it from Singapore. The other guy was doing it from Dubai. And he is forcing the RBI governor to not release US dollars to shore up the rupee.
Yeah.
And when that allegation came and articles appeared in Sunday Guardian, then the thing completely stopped.
Yeah.
But this thing is again back and move every time there is a concern. And this is an orchestrated move. It also has to do with what is called as participatory notes. I don't buy for a moment that FII money in India is actually foreign institutional investors. It's mostly politicians' money being routed back, round tripping.
Yeah.
So what happens is that is the thing that they have as a hammer to beat the government with. When last year or the year before, SEBI announced that participatory note ID has to be revealed, what they did was the Bombay Stock Exchange has about $300 billion worth of FII money. They said that FII money will leave the shores of India, and to prove their point, 20% left. Yeah. And there was a run on the rupee. And SEBI developed cold feet and they said, okay, we won't ask for it. That's not the way to do it. You have to take the hit one time and then just move on. And all these things can be sorted out. I know the people who are in there. Mr. Chidambaram has a lot of levers that he can pull. I have shouted myself hoarse. I said, look, you have to look a little bit deeper. This white collar corruption is not obvious. It is not like, those days when you open the drawer of a government official and you see rupees there, then you know that this guy has corrupt, you can catch him. Those days are long gone. Everything happens. Remember I told you about how the money is coming for the crude, right? So the 10%, everything is people are getting kickbacks. Yeah. Modi is trying to close these things, but how many places can he be and how many people can he trust? And this is really the problem that I see, and I don't know why that is not being addressed. In my opinion, Indian Administrative Service, about 30% can be from people abroad who are, people such as myself, 20, 25 years in, foreign countries who are used to how an efficient process should work, identifying the bottlenecks, and they don't need the kind of workforce that currently exists to implement this. You can take a small state like Goa or Delhi and implement pilot project, fine tune it, and then you can start releasing it for the rest of the country. If they had done it with GST like that, a lot more problems would have been solved before it got rolled out. Unfortunately, it was a big bullet that India bit. And we are still paying the price for it because it is inherently inefficient, and it's got still problems. Anyway, you get the point, right? I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is somebody is artificially keeping this at whatever, 75, 76 or whatever it is, where it should have been 45, 50. So $25, the ministry has to answer. And it's quiet. It's, we're not getting real logical, reasonable answers. And that's a serious cause of concern.
Yes.
That's the bottom line of, explanation that you have given. Now, the second point is, we'll step back a little bit on this. You draw a balance sheet of any country, right? Its debt equity ratio or its per capita indebtedness and what have you. You look at from any parameter, India is definitely doing far better than USA.
Of course.
US indebtedness is like, it's spiraled. I mean, it's skyrocketed. And then the kind of currency which US government itself knows that it's all fake dollars in circulation, they are unable to demonetize and unable to withdraw back. So given this kind of a situation, being the kind of, I'm talking purely on the balance sheet side. Looking at the balance sheet of the country, you go to any banker, you would obviously try to trust the Indian balance sheet than the US balance sheet in terms of its strengths or weaknesses. In spite of that, why are we at 76? So one explanation I heard from some people is, in the international market, the currency valuation also depends not necessarily on the economic factors, but it also depends on other extraneous factors. It's a question of sense of trust in the currency. So America is the world's bully today, right? So they feel safe and secure there. India, no, it doesn't cross its borders. So it's not a world player. The day India actually puts boots on the ground in Afghanistan, let's say, then Indian currencies going down to 60 or 55 or whatever. The world would automatically feel that this guy has the power and is powerful enough that I need to trust his currency. So I guess the way countries behave in the world scene also decides the trust they repose in that currency. This is another explanation I heard. So what's your take on it?
Absolutely right. You're spot on. See, India lost a golden opportunities when McMaster's came asking for help. I think 3-4 years ago, Nirmala Sitharaman was the Minister of Defense at that point, and he had said that they need India's help in supplanting the US forces with Indian boots on the ground. Now, here is where I don't know the dot, but I'm going to tell you something that needs to be verified. I believe that it was promised in a meeting between Prime Minister Modi and maybe Trump that India would participate in Afghanistan. The promise was made when he came to Washington. I don't know if it's made or not. That is what is being told. Because US will just like that not come asking for help. Okay, yeah. They should have had some indication that India is willing to put boots on the ground in Afghanistan. After that only, McMaster comes here, and then suddenly the defense minister says, no, we're not going to do it. And that was a huge setback because the US was completely banking upon India to do that part. And I can tell you, I don't understand why India is not doing that. If you look at the history of Afghanistan, I can tell you today, fully 17% of Afghan population, they are nothing but Marathas. Yeah. These are Marathas who were forced to go there because it was a punishment posting by the British. When they defeated the Marathas, they said, you guys go and rot in this place, which is hilly. When Britain finally conquered the Afghan frontier, they said, okay, you're all going to stay. Many men were just thrown there. They were forced to marry into the local population and settle down. So this is part of your empire, and these are all our people. They understand. You can understand the Pashtun. There are slight differences, but more or less everybody speaks a variant of Urdu. You can understand. India could have perfectly blended. Most important thing is culturally, India would have aligned itself to how the Afghan terrorist is thinking, to how the Afghan government is thinking, to how the Afghan person is thinking. India would have been much better, much more effective in policing the country, nurturing it back to health as compared to US, because US culturally is not on the same wavelength. I can tell you any number of times where, being from Eastern origin, when I used to sit in deals with Taiwanese or Koreans or Japanese, I could instantly look at their body language to see what was their pain point. And once I said that we will take care of this for you, things kind of move faster. So those kind of things needs to be addressed. And it just beats me as to why India did a U-turn and said, no, we won't put boots on the ground. Now, there are many vested interests in India. Lutyens is used to getting 20% kickbacks on defense, and that gravy train would have stopped, because if India had negotiated it correctly, they could have said, open your guns, your weaponry to us. We will take what we need to defend ourselves, not only in Afghanistan, but also in Kashmir. Game over for Pakistan, because India would have had better weaponry than them, and at much lesser cost. They could have used the state-of-the-art drones to effectively counter them. All good stuff, except the only thing that was the downside was you would be risking some of your troops in Afghanistan. But remember, India shouldn't think of Afghanistan as a country different from itself. It is a part, it's 4 fingers of your body. In 1947, there were some fingers. Very stupidly, India decided to not annex Kalat. Kalat wanted to join us. Pakhtunistan wanted to join us. Why did we not say that? Because India had a very, very, I don't know what word to use. You know, if you look at what happened in 1940s, just give me a small detour on history. You look at in Congress presidents, right? Congress was supposed to be the one that's going to come to power. It was first Subhash Chandra Bose, then I think 1 year of Jawaharlal Nehru, and then for 5-6 years it was Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. And it beats me as to how this person can be president of Congress party. The man was born in Makkah, in Saudi Arabia. He was not even a citizen of India. And he got way more prominence in the Congress dispensation for this particular, because he happened to be the president for 5-6 years when they didn't hold elections. And in 1946, it should have been Sardar Patel who should have become the president. Whereas this backroom ganging thing happened, and they decide to choose Nehru, and for some reason Nehru didn't want to line up with the frontier Gandhi, and he wanted instead to have this puppet called Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, and the whole thing went out of whack. India should have had Kalam, because then India would have it would have bound Pakistan. Balochistan would have not gone to Pakistan. It would have been part of India. Pakhtunistan would be part of India. It would have been only Sindh and Punjab. That was it. Yeah. So, and the only explanation for that is that it is, so far away. It is not. And Tariq Fateh is spot on when he says that this was a convenience thing, because I think Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad wanted to have his prominence in this new dispensation, and he felt that by bringing all these people that his star would diminish. I think it is pure personal reasons, stupid thing. We should have had that, and they should have fixed it at this point. And you are absolutely right. India needs to start doing some things like this, which will give it the legitimacy. Remember, I said in 1966, India's Gulf rupee was the main method of currency in many, many countries. India let it go. It was not that the others wanted to desert it.
Yeah, the explanation that I hear from some of these establishments is, we don't have an entry and exit option to Afghanistan because it's landlocked today. US has sanctioned Iran beyond control. So had we had that option, if Iran-US relations were better off, probably we could have had another route to go into Afghanistan. So entry-exit is a reason why we are not going, is one explanation people gave. Not that I'm buying it fully, but the fact remains that that is definitely an issue that we do have.
You could have factored that in as a part of the agreement and allowed India to use the Chabahar road all the way up to Kabul, and that would have given you the land into it. True. And more importantly, see, the thing was that US is not able to get into Iran and get that connected and well serviced. India could have done that. Yeah. Okay. So US, see, that would have also lessened the importance of Pakistan for US. Today, every grain of cereal that goes into Afghanistan goes through this Khyber Pass, Khyber Pass area, right? So everything was available. You didn't even allow to go to the next level of talks. They could have done it. See, this shows to the deficit, the intellectual deficit that exists in the current cabinet. I can't say much about many of the ministers. I think they are more Lal Batti cars more than anything else. I'm sorry, I speak my mind.
You're bang on. You're bang on. You're bang on. Absolutely right. I fully agree with you. Our topic today is on currency. So the point is that if India had put its boots outside its territory, our currency would have automatically strengthened, is a theory, which you validated.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think let's open it up for questions. Dheeraj, you can go ahead and open the chat. See, we close the chat because what happens is while you're talking, there could be messages coming in. It could be disturbing. So we had blocked it actually. Now Dheeraj, you can go ahead and open it. And let's go with a few chartered accountants, and then there are other seniors also. Vijay, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, see, two questions. One is, okay, Giri has already asked you in terms of the currency appreciation. So I don't want to touch that again. But the second question is on the Indian balance sheet. When we don't have proper accounting standards in terms of determining our balance sheets. When I was part of the local standards in drafting the accounting standards for local bodies and all that, it's all in nascent stage. and we don't account things in a proper manner. So there is a lot of hidden reserves in our Indian balance sheet to determine the value of currency again. So the strength of that. So how do you look at that deficiency, and whether we can suggest anything to the government of India to improve their financial outlook?
Yeah, it's actually a very good question. There are hidden things. For example, where does money come from? Things like Manrega or any of these things. Budget says something, and then you keep announcing new things for new schemes. Where is the money coming for that? And I believe a lot of that padding happens from, for example, the dividend you get from crude being low. The moment crude starts going up, India starts finding itself in hot water. For example, during the Manmohan Singh period, they were subsidizing the value of petrol at the pump. And they were subsidizing it by agreeing to float bonds that they kept out of people's knowledge. And then those bonds came up for payment during Piyush Goyal's tenure as finance minister. And then India had to pay all those bonds. So there is a lot of Gudal is what you call harakiri that India has done in its balance sheet in the past. And this all goes back to wanting to be transparent. I mean, I can tell you India's premier stock exchange, some people have to go to jail. SEBI, they have to do their job. If they don't want to do their job, if they are like hand in glove with these guys, they want to always look the other way when crimes are happening. If your exchange itself is corrupt, then that place where you can get money for your idea is compromised. India boasts of 5,000 stocks being listed in the stock exchange. Only 150 are actively traded. You take the Nifty 50 out, there are only 100 shares that you can trade. Which is why you feel like the stock market is doing well. Nobody feels wealthy because it's just a game that is being played among a small set of players. So like that, I'm sure in government also there are hidden areas that are not coming out. Nobody comes out ahead in these things. It is better to take a deep breath and come back and say, this is what it is. Just like NPAs have to be excused at some point, and you say, okay, hit the reset button. We'll make sure that moving forward, that we use the technologies like blockchain, where it's impossible to hide the money. You can say that the money from this guy went to this guy, to this guy, to this guy. You can have the money trail established within the technology itself. So there is no way anybody can say, I never touched this money. So here is the technology that is coming to you on a platter. It is just that India needs to adopt it. I had even written a book called The Gist of GSTN, where I said the GSTN network software, if it adds blockchain on as a fundamental thing, then everybody can use that as an API to do better forecasting, logistics, making sure like the government could find out using that kind of software to find out if there is a natural calamity, let's say in Bhuj in Gujarat, they could find out instantly where all the resources are located, so that they can go from the closest point and make sure that the resources that they need arrive in the shortest possible time. They would know what trucks are moving where, they can repurpose. All sorts of stuff could have been done. But the fundamental requirement was that it had to have something like the blockchain in the GSTN software. I wrote this thing about a few months before GST became official in July 2017. I think it was 3-4 months before that. I don't know if it has happened or not, but it would be a very, very important thing to have. So transparency is not going to come just like that. Suddenly somebody is not going to become Gautam Buddha. So what has to happen is the process itself forces you to be transparent. That way you are going to find more things coming out. Today, social media has brought out a lot of the shenanigans that politicians and others used to involve in. If it was not for social media, you would be happily lapping up the stories coming up from MSM, which is all fake narratives for the most part.
Yeah, and I think technology would make a hell lot of a difference.
Yes,
introducing
yes.
technology would make all the difference. Yeah,
and you can't say that technology is going to lose jobs. In India's case, the sheer numbers are so many that you have to use technology to manage this thing. You have to use technology. There is no way you can find out what is going on. Like, for example, look at the problem they're having in tracing down all these coronavirus patients now who are turned positive. What is the guy? Who are the people that got spread out, and so on and so forth. A lot of challenges there. So I hope I answered your question in a sort of roundabout way, but basically the systems have to change. That is where the change has to come.
Yeah, fair enough. Next is I'm calling in Chandan Lohia ji. Chandan Lohia ji, please go ahead and ask a question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll just start my video.
See, Chandan ji has a lot of interests in that area, Afghanistan. He travels to Afghanistan pretty often, actually.
I see.
I have lived in Dubai for
Namaskar.
almost 10 years, sir, and recently back in India. In Dubai, one presentation we had given to the government, which the government then adopted, something called e-dirham, wherein part of the fiat currency was mirrored as e-dirham, and all government to government transactions were strictly based on, even today it is based on e-dirham only.
Okay.
What stops India from adopting a similar thing? Most of the transactions, say even up to 45%, are ledger transactions in any country. However, any country is forced to print those many number of notes to keep in circulation or in reserve.
Actually, the GST has changed the laws a little, rules of game a little bit, in the sense that now the state government's finance department doesn't have much work to do. Everything is coming out of the receipts of tax revenues that the government is giving you back, right? So there is some reset that needs to happen. There is no reason why you cannot have the same kind of government-to-government expenditures being tracked this way. There's no reason why not. Absolutely, it is possible. By the way, I must say that every officer, administrative officer, or the administrative services that I meet, everybody is very erudite. There is willingness to change. And it is just that we have to find out that if you don't do some of these things, India is going to become a banana republic. That's the bluntest way I can tell you. In a banana republic, what happens is you form your own rules. Everybody is to himself. You know, today it's money, tomorrow there will be something else. That is how, you know, these banana republics have become. India can slip easily into that. It has to be careful. And I think somewhere you have to take your lumps, and you never let a crisis go waste. And that mindset has to be there. I'm not so sure that mindset is there in the current government, because the way I see it, government is looking at one crisis at a time. Let's take care of the health crisis, then we will look at the economy. Unfortunately, this is not a one at a time sequential thing. There are parallel things you have to run at the same time, because the longer you delay acting on the economy, the worse it is going to be for them to resume back. Many people have made this comment that March payrolls will happen. April, you are going to get a cut. In May, there is no money to pay salaries.
True.
So the money infusion has to happen sooner rather than later. And I'm still waiting to hear what policies they are going to do. Clearly, money has to be printed, but there is that fear that the purposing of the money will not go to the place it's intended. That's why I did this whole talk about stablecoin and being able to use some way to monitor the funding.
Yeah.
There are a lot of very smart individuals, but there's the inertia. When a government has to move, right, the inertia is always going to be coming in the way. But I believe there are city states like Chandigarh, for example, or Goa, who are fairly technically competent and accomplished in that you can, if you want to try something radical, use that as your kitchen. Before you unleash it to the main restaurant chain, use that as your kitchen. Try to do some things there and see how it plays out there. Work out your wrinkles. Then you start rolling it out for the rest of the country. Some of these things have to be done in that way only. You cannot, flip the switch on like the way GST was done. Good idea, GST. In fact, GST paves the way for zero personal income tax, because whatever that money you are going to collect there, you can adjust it in the GST rates and say, look, nobody pays income tax. You are free to do whatever you want, free to earn however much amount of money you want. You just pay the GST for what you consume. So essentially, you are going from you're taxing somebody's consumption rather than taxing somebody's earnings. And I think that is a step that is in a positive direction. India never wastes anything. They'll find use for it. And I think India is a very responsible consumer. Sure, there will be some turbulence. There will be some drop in revenues for the government. But government can always print notes. States can't do that. Central government can print notes. And they can always explain to the world, look, this is what we are doing. People were in awe that India did demonetization. People were in awe that India came up with a single GST across the country. because it's not possible even in United States. Every state thinks they are great. They won't accept somebody else doing something. Today, I'll give you a simple example. A doctor practicing medicine in California cannot practice medicine in any other state. Because of this pandemic, they have relaxed that restriction to say that everybody can practice everywhere. But that rule is there in US. For all its modernness, US has some very backward rules for voting things and all the other things. So what I'm trying to say is it's an imperfect world, and India probably needs to figure out a way to get through this and also leap forward during this time of crisis.
Thank you, sir. Can I invite Professor Murthy Garu? Yeah.
I have a small question, sir.
Yeah.
See how to strengthen our dollar. You mentioned in your narration that Swaminathan and Gurumurthy has done some model, but the government is not able to. Somehow it has not taken up that system, something like that. What is it, and how it strengthens dollar, and whether it reached the present government attention at all? First, I want to know how to strengthen the dollar according to.
So strengthen the dollar or rupee, sir? Strengthen the dollar.
Sorry,
or rupee?
strengthen rupee against dollar. Right. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Rupee against dollar. So how it can be done in the present scenario, and in the light of the suggestions made or recommendations made by our Gurumurthy and Swaminathan, and you mentioned one more name, whatever it be.
Professor R. Vaidyanathan.
Please allow.
Yeah. So everybody, right. Everybody comes back to this asset of India that is not counted, which is gold. You take Vaidyanathan's writings, you take Gurumurthy's writings, everywhere everybody has suggested, let us come up with a scheme to incentivize people. Don't ask questions where they got their bars of gold. Don't ask them that question. Don't. It's okay. It's okay to have gold ingots. As long as they put that ingot in the bank and then they take money off of that. And in fact, ingot's purity is very clearly defined, and it's much easier to deal with in terms of giving a loan against that. Just as long as you don't ask that guy, where did you get this money from? So that mindset has to change. Income tax officers have this feeling that I need to ask this guy tough questions. I will find out where he made this money. And this is used as a mean to extort money from them. Most of the time, it's like a corruption transaction deal, and then it goes away. So that part has to change. Let us try, and we have amazing amount of gold. At the same time, you don't want to take that gold and then strip it out and then give them back a bar afterwards when the bank takes it back. And don't do that. If same form, whatever you got, you give it back. But you use that gold to come up and tell the world, I got so much gold reserves with me, and therefore my currency should be at this point. Infosys will scream, Wipro will scream, TCS will scream, but it's only 4 or 5 companies. And they all managed when India's rupee was 35, 40 even. It is something that they need to adjust mentally also, that, you would be amazed to know how many people sit on the bench in all these companies and they still turn profit quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. Why can't they use the people sitting on the bench to come up with a new product idea? They don't want to do that. So that's why I'm saying, by unnecessarily letting the rupee slide, you are rewarding somebody's inefficiency. I know Nandan Nilekani will hate me for saying all these things, but God damn it, you are private enterprise. You say you are one of the shining beacons of enterprise in India. Show the way.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me now invite Sandeep. Sandeep Vempatia, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, I just have 2 questions here. So can I understand if taxes is the only way that we kind of create value for the currency? That's first thing. The second thing is, why can't we just think about creating money, and why are we so hell-bent on that taxes are the only way of creating infrastructure and creating welfare programs? I know we have FRBM limits and all these things, and Gurumurthy ji already made a statement that the 3% FRBM limit has to be just scrapped off. And most countries across, and in the presentation you also mentioned that many countries are resorting to this the QE and helicopter money. My question is, well, is India, delayed, or is it right time that India also looks at that kind of way of printing money and starting off the welfare programs and even kickstarting the economy?
The problem lies with the finance ministry and the finance minister. Finance minister has to be somebody who understands global macroeconomic picture of the world, how things are changing. And that has not happened in India. It's very, very unfortunate. Almost all the finance ministers that India have had, with the exception of maybe Manmohan Singh and a few others who were very rooted in their ground basics, you've always had lawyers as finance ministers. So that essentially ruined the whole concept. And even today, I don't believe that the person who is in finance minister is the right person for this fit. I don't believe anybody in the cabinet is good enough for that. This is my personal opinion. You need somebody of the heft of Dr. Subramanian Swamy to come in. It's not to look, India's economy was wrecked even before this crisis happened. And now this is actually adding fuel to the fire. It's getting worse and worse. FRBM limits and all these things are guidelines. India doesn't have to follow it. India is big enough today to say that, look, I'm consuming 1/3 of the gold manufactured in the world. God damn it, I'll set the price. Why should London be setting the price? Why can't India sit with China and say, look, we are controlling 75% of the buying. Why can't we just say that we will buy gold only at $750 per ounce instead of $1,500? Why are you letting somebody who has no skin in the game set the price? You have to start flexing some of these muscles. By the way, Narendra Modi, foreign policy in many things, very muscular, very good. I like that thing. It's in your face. It's good. But the same kind of thing has to be also done in finance. And for reason that I just can't understand, we are way too meek, way too soft in terms of dealing with our foreign exchange reserves and currency thing. We don't understand, by making the rupee appreciate from 76 to 70, 10%, say 76 to 69, 10%, you're making every Indian rich by 10%. You're putting 10% in everybody's pocket and you're not even taking taxes out of him. Understand, this is a huge benefit for every individual. Because what happens if the exchange rate, if rupee appreciates, what happens? The petrol costs less at the pump. Then the indirect cost, because of getting the pulses and seeds from place of production to a place of consumption, goes down. So first of all, you got 10% right from the beginning. On top of that, everything is going to cost less. Unfortunately, all today's economic models are priced in with inflation, that they want inflation to be 3% or 2%, not less than 0. Whereas this will force that thing to go negative, because things will cost less. People will say, oh, we'll get stagnation, we'll get deflation, blah, 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 blah. Look, this is a time when normal economic rules do not apply. You have to figure out a way to make everybody feel rich. So this is the other problem. People will say, oh, wait, if somebody is going to pay less for the product tomorrow, then I will not hoard it. What's wrong with that? So nobody will hoard onions. Every election, somebody is hoarding onions and saying, oh, pyaz ka daam badh gaya, isliye government nikalo, right? All those things will go away. So we have to try and shake up a few things. God damn it, now is the best time to do it with the least amount of blowback from other countries. Everybody is worried about their own citizens. Hey, prime ministers are falling sick. They didn't know if that guy was going to survive it or not. Bojo. Yeah. This is the time to do all these radical changes. I don't know what they are thinking. That's all I can say.
So Sandeep had raised about an issue about helicopter money. We have in the audience Sree V.V. Lakshminarayana garu. I'm sure you heard of him. He's more popularly known as J.D. Lakshminarayana. He's the one who handled Jagan's case, He was a CBI director. He was a CBI director. He's on this panel. Unfortunately, his mic is not working. So he's typed out his question. I'll just read it out.
Sure.
He said, many chief ministers are proposing helicopter money instead of qualitative easing. So in future, what steps are being suggested, like the prepaid debit card? Is there a blockchain technology to control this huge spending of money in the elections?
Absolutely.
By the way, he's now joined politics.
Oh, I see. I see. Welcome to politics. Welcome to the murky world of politics. Well, blockchain is a must. It is not something that's a nice to have. It is a must have. And financing in elections will go away if you start easing out 2,000 rupees, which I believe India is already doing. It should also ease out 1,000. It should also ease out 500. The biggest amount should be only 200. You define that I will have between 20 and 200. That's it. And imagine how many 200 rupee bundles will people carry around to distribute. That is the way to tackle this problem. You are not going to, don't jail anybody, don't do anything. Things that you can fix it, right? That takes care of it. And as far as money in elections is concerned, I was talking to Lok Satta Party President, Sree Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. He was in US 2 years ago and I was interviewing him. And he said that the average voter does not take a candidate seriously unless the candidate is willing to give some money.
Yeah, true.
It may be 500 rupees, the other guy may be giving 5,000, but if you give 0, you are not getting the vote. If you give 500, somehow this guy thinks that you are serious, that you are going to do something for the constituency. That is the level to which politics have sunk to. Fine, if you make transportation of money harder, that will make this problem go away over time. It's not going to go away instantly. Look, this Keynesian model of having inflation to dictate how the economy should move, you discard that for a few years and try to see how you can appreciate the rupee and see that dividend that people will enjoy will immediately start showing up. And when that happens, and suddenly, you are getting more money with the money you already have. What's not to like about that? Today, I'll tell you, Modi has announced 2 rupees a kilo of rice, 3 rupees a kilo of wheat. But who's implementing it? State governments. When I talk to somebody in West Bengal, I find out that only some people are getting all the things. The others are just getting water and air, which is already provided by nature. Now, voluntary organizations are going and helping them out because those people are being preyed upon by conversion people. They're saying, we will give you rice, now you convert. Look, this stupid thing that a leader doesn't know how to lead, but can only create vote banks and come to power. This is the leadership quality that we have in India now.
Well, I don't know. That's another topic of discussion, I'm sure. But the electoral reforms itself is crying to be, implemented, but that's not happening. We still have just carbon copied the British bicameral system and the British electoral system, where we have absurdities like, our Malkajgiri constituency in Hyderabad has 30 lakh voters or something like that, and Ladakh has about 1.5 lakh voters, and both have the same single vote in the parliament. It got ridiculously like that. Plus, what happens is, in a constituency, suppose the winner gets 5 votes more than the other person. He is a winner, another one is a loser. Now, how do you call him a loser? I mean, he got almost equal votes, right? His voice and his representation has to also have some say in the system. Unless you implement that, you are saying this binary, either me or you, I don't think it's going to work. Maybe some other day we'll do a call on electoral. Yes, we'll do that. Yes, sure. And
I have a lot of thoughts on that, by the way. Same blockchain can be used for elections also.
Yeah, I mean, technology has to be brought in, but I'm saying fundamentally there should not be a loser. The moment you say somebody has won an election, somebody has lost it, your vote bank politics will continue.
Exactly.
So we need to give pro rata, proportional representation or whatever. We have to talk this out.
Right.
Anyway, thank you. I think we'll ask Ramkumarji. Ramkumarji, please go ahead, sir.
Namaskar ji. It was wonderful listening to you, Mr. Iyer, and thanks, Mr. Giridhar. My question is, can't we tweak the purchase of crude oil by taking advance commitments through various mechanisms instead of fluctuating? For example, today, the cost of a barrel of crude oil has gone down drastically over the last 4 months' time, but in India, the retail prices are still extremely high. Now, what is the kind of a mechanism that the government should adopt? And do you have any reasons why it is not being adopted?
Actually, I don't know. I had a long answer on this particular question. I was telling how it is being kept artificially high, the reasons for that. two things that could make things life easier for India. One is to take a stake in the ground and say, I'm going to peg to 50 rupees a dollar for the next 5 years. And then I'm going to slowly let it appreciate. Something like that, which gives a fair amount of visibility for people who are buying crude to know that this is what their bill is going to be. And with that, you're also going to be able to get better efficiencies in the whole procurement process. Today, it is all over the place. Many like to do spot purchases because they think that the crude is going to go down. And the same people will start crying once the crude goes the other way. So for anything, we are not, I mean, industries kind of got a little spoiled. They like things to go in a certain way. And when things don't go that way, they don't know how to deal with that. So that planning mindset has to be fine-tuned. I mean, like I said, you know, just bringing more transparency itself will give us a lot of credibility in the world. Today, Mr. Modi enjoys a huge amount of popularity because of the way he dealt with the coronavirus by being proactive in the lockdown and also having a low incidence of deaths because of this. The same kind of thing, however, is to also happen on the economics or the financial side. If that happens, by the way, India will be one of the most desired destinations. US is thinking of having negative interest rates, which means I have to pay money to my bank to keep my money there.
Which is actually happening in Japan for quite some years now.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, sir. Hanuman Luji is a chartered accountant. Hanuman Luji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Sir, good evening. It's a very good presentation, sir. Sir, with regarding that currency, that I think instead of going for dollar, we can think of going for global currency for exchange for international transactions. Maybe gradually it will be accepted by many countries, but it should start with from India onwards to paying when we want to purchase, when we want to import, we'll pay this global currency only, and that I think that will be better instead of dollar. And during this war of China and America war, it will be drastically, it will be other side that may create loss to anybody who are dealing with international transactions.
Can I answer your question with a thing that happened in history? Do you know why Saddam Hussein lost his job?
Sir.
Do you know why Saddam Hussein lost his job?
Because he wanted to go away from dollar.
Yes. That is the power of this. Same thing. Same thing with Nicolas Sarkozy. He was the one who objected to US quantitative easing. He said that if you do that, Europe has to appreciate. And guess what? Nicolas Sarkozy was out of a job.
Yeah.
Big Western interest behind this. It's not so easy.
Yeah, they'll finish you off. Yeah. Thank you. Next is Subramaniam ji. Go ahead, sir.
Namaskar, sir. First of all, let me congratulate Iyer and Mr. Girdhar Mamadi. It's a wonderful combination of technology and finance with the software and hardware. Now, these days, it is fintech services now. So the products are also going to be fintech, in which process the blockchain, the big data analytics on real-time systems is going to be of a high order. And in that context, the gold ETF also has come. But be that as it may be, your one point which you raised regarding raising of currency by 30% of GDP is equivalent to 5.73 lakhs crores.
Right.
But whereas for infrastructure, our recent estimation is 100 lakh crores. How are we going to make up this? This is what I would like to.
So what you have to create in such cases is you have to have a public-private partnership. For example, if supposing there is river linking, the people who are having no water should be able to pay for some of that part. And the dividend for them will be that instead of catching water, literally, water comes to your house on the tap. So these kinds of things can be done. In fact, Modi is very strong whenever he has this kind of an equation where he says, you pay the money, I'll make sure that it gets delivered. If I remember in his early term, the farmers of Gujarat were all getting free electricity, but the electricity was only coming for 4 hours a day. And they said, look, we can't do cultivation with 4 hours of electricity. And Modi said, okay, you have a choice. I'll give you 24 hours electricity, but you have to pay for it. And the Gujarat farmers said, yes, we will pay for it. And Gujarat was the first state which had 24 hours electricity for the longest time. So this is a thing, you know, if you want more money, involve the public. India's savings rates are huge, 28 to 30% even today, or maybe 20 to 30, 20, whatever the number is. India has a big propensity to save. We don't waste a single thing. Just look at maybe our generation is a little bit wasteful, but the previous generation, our moms and dads, they will not waste a single thing. They will find any reuse for it. Even if you buy a Horlicks dabba, you finish the Horlicks, the dabba goes and stores something else. Otherwise, there's somebody who will want to come and take your dabba. Somebody comes and takes your radhi for newspaper. They want to do and make packets out of it. So we reuse. We are ultimate at reusing things. So we are very good at that as long as we involve the people and we deliver to them. This deliverance is the thing. Already people love Modi because of what he did with direct benefit transfer schemes, for example, in for senior citizens to give back the dividend, like the subsidy for gas cylinders. It happens automatically into your bank account. You get an SMS saying that so much money has been credited towards your subsidy for gas cylinder. People love it. So a beginning has been made. We need to just keep going forward and more towards that.
Sure. I think one of the fundamental differences between the previous governments and the way Modi has done is, I think every government was focused on creating entitlements and rights.
Yes.
He was the first guy who started talking about responsibilities.
Yes.
Right. Social responsibility, societal responsibility is something which is very unique about him, and I think that has given him a lot of respect around.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, sure. Next is, I think, where was I looking for him? 1 second, sir. Anil Sadanand ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Good evening.
Yeah. Anil ji, please go ahead and ask. Yeah.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Yeah, good evening.
Sir, my question is like, you're telling for the economy to boost, infrastructure is required. So there is a lot of corruption and it's an open secret. One simple example is Mysore, Bangalore. The nice road has been stopped due to reasons which everybody knows about it. Instead of interfering, they have come out with another plan of 6 lane from Bangalore to Mysore for 6,000 crore. And I know what are the, let me not open up like how the corruption has happened. Nevertheless, looking at this recent example, can't, as you said, we can take a pilot project like Goa or Chandigarh for any of such implementation. For such project, why can't a responsible company like L&T can spend their CSR money to this? And in case there is a shortfall, can't the government pump in the money and make it possible?
All good ideas. The CSR money is the prerogative of the company, and they tend to do it for what gives them the best bang for the buck. And you can't, fault them for that. If they lay a new road from Bangalore to Mysore, unless it is carrying a lot of L&T employees, they may not be very enthused. I'll give you an example. Infosys fixed the problem of immigration by improving the immigration software. And they also said that they will lay the infrastructure for roads. And they did that infrastructure for the road from the airport to their offices. And after that, the enthusiasm was less and less. And that's why you got into, you come to Hebal and then, I don't know how well you know Bangalore. It's great to come up to Hebal and then afterwards all hell breaks loose. Yeah. So that is India. Look, India is 1.3536 as we speak. One more million got added. India is a huge country. We have to get. I think Modi has had the most amount of success in telling the whole country, let us move in this direction. When he says like Janta curfew or lockdown, be with me, trust me, I will do it. So our problems are not something the rest of the world has faced. And you have to have desi solutions to take care of this stuff. And you will have public works department is the most money-making department in every state government. State government is still realizing waking up to the reality of GST. Soon they will too. because no more toll gate stoppages and things like that. Like anything, all these things are going down. It's just that today, it's like power. Computer has been pressed, reset button has been pressed, and we are rebooting. And a few things can be changed to make sure that some of the more egregious, more obvious losses can be addressed. And it's a mindset. I believe that India is ready to do that plunge because a lot more, at least the middle class families, right? Somewhere or the other, some relative of theirs is already working some other country. Everybody sees the prosperity and they say, why can't it be done in India? Because of that itself, a lot of changes have come about. I can tell you today, if you go in at least the southern part of India, the roads are fantastic. You can go from any city to any city. Instead of waiting at the airport and this side and that side and the commute and the extra time that you have to go and reach for the security purposes, if you can drive, it's just 1 or 2 hours more. You can set the time when you want to do it. You can stop wherever you want. So a lot of things are possible. All I'm trying to say is, India of today is better than India of 2019. It is better than the India of 2018. There is progress happening. It's not happening as fast as we want. Now is the time. Now is the chance to do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, great. Rajendran ji, please go ahead, sir.
Namaste ji.
Namaskar.
I have two statements and to the question. And you suggested moving from a GDP currency valuation to purchasing power currency valuation. Yeah. Basically, that's what you have said. Right. One is India has had employed that model for more thousands of years until the colonial powers took over India. So we have always had an economy that was based on the purchasing power or gold in this particular case. And economy was running for thousands of years and India was very rich. Now, the last 300, 400 years, Indian economy has gone down, clearly, where we adopted the Western model of, the marketplace capital system, right? Now, if what you say is true, that is, China might actually move to pegging the yuan based on gold, since you yourself quoted a couple of examples, that will, in a sense, indicate we are possibly looking at an economic war, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, even coronavirus is being looked at as in some kind of a war now. People are saying that this is a war because first it's like rocking the cradle after pinching the baby. The virus was a baby pinching and now China is supplying medical supplies to everybody. The N95, that's famous mask, right? China has an equivalent called KN95. Today, everybody is angry at China. They don't want to buy it. But then people are not averse to buying it from Vietnam or Sri Lanka or Turkey. Who knows where Turkey got it? Do you think Turkey manufactured it? No. It is just China is going and sending it there. So the point I'm trying to make is this: we have to get to the bottom of this coronavirus, how it started. First, we have to control it, and then we have to get to the bottom of it. So there are some major repercussions that are going to happen, which is why I'm saying again and again and again, like, there is no better time than now to come up with some fundamental reform. India will not go wrong if they implement what I call a stable coin. What is wrong in identifying how much wealth you have in your own house and saying to the world, this is the amount of gold I have? Nothing wrong in that. And use that to good work, put it to good work.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a crisis, every crisis gives you opportunities.
Right.
I think with this crisis being what it is, India should grab it with both hands, legs, and what have you.
Right.
They shouldn't let this go. Yeah. Sree Salam ji, please go ahead. Yeah. Sree Salam ji, you have muted it yourself. You have to unmute at your end. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. No, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, sir. There is a problem with your mic. You'll have to switch it on. Yeah, please speak. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. Hello? Maybe we'll
go ahead.
I think we'll get back to him. Balaji Garu, please go ahead. Yeah. Balaji Garu, you see.
It's open now?
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
you shouldn't touch your button. We'll unmute it. The moment you touch it, you'll have a problem. Yeah. We are controlling
Go
it.
ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks for the great session, sir. I'm going back to what you're talking about regarding gold, surrounding the gold aspect of it. One is assuming government not taking any action and whatever you suggested. Okay, pledging gold. You said, if people go to the bank and pledge their gold, and you have an instrument which is going to give you a certain percentage of different metals, and the value is arrived at. And in that process, a lot of assessment can be done how much of gold is in India, right? Is that one way of looking at it? But knowing the kind of Indian families' mentalities here, they do not want their Lakshmi to go out into the banks. But if it is necessary, they'll put only a certain part of it. So thereby,
fine,
your
right?
assessment is only on an assumption basis.
Look,
only on an assumptive basis. Sorry.
No,
Can I complete the other one?
Please go ahead and complete your question. I'm sorry, I should have not.
Sorry, me too. So keeping that in mind, it will not give you a total clarity of how much of gold in reserves here in India. Second, gold being accumulated by China to strengthen yuan. Right? I'm saying strengthen yuan, not intentionally trying to bring down dollar in the international scenario. But thereby, without India doing anything, don't you think the rupee will strengthen against the dollar by default?
India is an import-driven economy. India is not an export-driven economy. And therefore, unless in the present system where you are going to continue to play with the same rules as everybody else, unless you become a net exporter, your currency will not improve. That's as hard as it gets. What will happen because of coronavirus is that India will go back and start regenerating some of the industries that it had given away to China. For example, textile, manufacturing of textile, cotton manufacturing, all those things will have to come back to India. That way, India will also find employment and do those things. Investment in those sectors, why I want people to give gold, I disagree with you on one point. In 1962 war, when India suddenly found themselves that they don't have enough money to fight the war, politicians like Kamaraj and everybody, they went on an open jeep, street to street, telling people, we need money to fight this war. And women took out their bangles and gave it to them. Nobody asked any question about what is, what's going to happen to my bank. This was freely given. In this case, MSMEs cannot be just like that given the money. You have to have some incentive for them to come through, think through what they want to do. So this is a win-win situation. Don't give money just like that in the hands of somebody without any responsibility from the other side. It goes back to what Giridharji has said. He is suddenly now reminding people of the responsibility towards themselves, their community and their country. All these things have to be there. And you need to have that check and balance. You're not going to touch the jewelry. Like I said, the bank is giving you a free locker to keep your gold for the time that you want your loan. And the mother will tell the boy, go and get that gold back. I need it for something else. And he will go and make sure that his loan is paid off in time. We can do it, guys. I mean, I'm telling you, the demand is going to come from within. India doesn't have to go outside the doors to try and say, I will do this for you cheaply, nothing like that. India needs to manufacture for its own. Every country is going to turn inward because the risk of dealing with an infectious product is far, 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 far higher than dealing with it internally, where you can control the processes a little bit more. I can tell you one more thing. When you travel in airplanes now, you have the security check, right? You're going to have this immunization or health check before that. They won't even let you go to that point until you cross this health check now. That they are going to make sure that inside the airport zone, everybody is free of any disease. That means even if you have a simple fever, you cannot travel. I'm telling you, that's going to happen.
True.
Yeah. True. We will not be in the same type of world. We'll be in a different world now.
Lots of things are going to change.
Probably post-corona, Make in India is going to help us a lot. And
yes,
that's what I feel.
Yes.
Thank you. Ramonji, please go ahead and ask. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Iyer. Sorry, started in Telugu. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, like Mr. Jaishankar, the foreign external affairs minister, can we have somebody in the finance minister, and who do you think would be the best person with the finance background?
Well, I've been told that I'm biased. See, what India needs today is somebody who can print money and explain to the world in a very convincing manner why the money printing has to be done, and explaining the world a roadmap that the governments of other countries will believe and say that this person is telling the truth because I learned from this person. This person was my teacher in Harvard. You know, people send their kids to Harvard. Who send their kids to Harvard? The kids of politicians. They've all come now. Dr. Swami's students have all come. They have become finance ministers. They have become advisors in all countries all over the world. So you are not making use of one of your best assets because of the credibility that person brings. I don't know the reason for this. Right now, if you ask me, a hungry person is not going to listen to anything else except in terms of food. And India will reach that stage very, very soon. We are not realizing how bad things are. And that realization, the sooner it comes, the faster it will happen. I don't believe that there is anybody in the current cabinet who can have that kind of gravitas. Gravitas means credibility, that he says, okay, this is why I'm doing this. This is why this is going to happen. And things may not happen exactly that way. You have to do some, maneuverings and whatever it is. First, you need to know that this person knows what he's doing. I have that problem at that point. Do I know that I'm convinced that person who's interested with this task knows what that person is doing? I don't believe that is true. And these are political. Look, when there is a matter of life and death, this politics, that somebody will outshine you, this, that, those things all go down the waste basket. The last thing India wants is a civil war. Look at what happened in that Palghar area. Two people, of course, they didn't have the proper paperwork to leave the thing. They were trying to go and get the body of their Guruji from Surat. And mob frenzy happened. Somebody just sells something. So we have this civil war kind of situation happening. Shaheen Bagh, civil war. The riots in Delhi, same thing. So you are having this uncontrolled regions. Why is it happening? Because police is not going to be able to manage this. We have horribly outnumbered. You're still giving them lathis when most of the police departments across the world have guns. We don't do that to our policemen. So we are creating a situation that is ripe for civil war, and 1.3 billion fighting amongst themselves. No, that's not what Bharat Varsha is. That's not what Sanatan Dharma is. It won't come to that. There will be a leader who will rise from that also. But today, the situation is that there has to be a change in finance ministry. This is my personal opinion. You may want to agree with me or disagree with me, but I believe that our financials are far, far more delicate than what the government is letting on. There is just no money around, and printing money, they are scared because they'll break that FRDM rules, and people are not telling them. This is like Chakravyuham. Think of that way. You don't want to go inside, and you have to get inside. You have no choice.
Yeah. Well, I've read an article. I'm sure it must have come to your notice as well. Somebody who was a little more charitable to the current finance minister. What they have written is Nehru had TTK as a finance minister. He was executing what was told to him, but the person who actually told him what to do was Mahan Lourabis.
I see. Planning commission, yeah. Planning commission, yeah.
Yeah, Mahan Lourabis was the brain behind the Nehruvian whatever they did.
Yeah.
The executioner was TTK, and TTK was very loyal and very efficient in executing what was told to him. So you have Nirmala Sitharaman, whose credentials are, impeccable, and one of the reasons we had a challenge in Arun Jaitley was there were leakages, and then what happened to 2G and all, right? 2G case and all.
Right.
Chidambaram not getting prosecution approvals and all. So in that sense, she is somebody who is not corruptible, and she is like probably a best bet you have for being transparent and strict. But then who is the Mahana loan beast for Narendra Modi? So
I think there's a group of people. I don't know exactly who's calling the shots, because Planning Commission is abolished now. So you don't have this Niti Aayog. Yeah. But you see, we need to think what is India centric, that we have not still done it. We are very comfortable accepting somebody's view of us rather than we are doing our own introspection and saying, this is what I am, this is where I should be doing. I mean, the street vendor who makes crisp pakodas knows that if he gives out unhealthy food, even one day, one session, his business is done. Nobody is going to come to him. So there is self-check mechanism right there. And we go and try to say, look, you have sold 1,000 bhajis today, you haven't paid any taxes, therefore you have to pay taxes. I mean, that kind of stuff we have to change our mindset. Making money is good. India always had this philanthropic bent to it. You know, how many of us know that when you go to Tirupati, usually there is like a small thing tied up. Because the first rupee you'd have tied up saying that if I succeed in my business, I'll put so much money, and that will be the thing that you go and put in the hundi and don't think about it again. So we have to go back to our roots. Our roots tell us what is the right and what is the wrong way to live. For far too long, we have been told that we are inferior. I think that thinking has changed. In fact, India should be leading the world in becoming more Sanatani in its outlook. Look, like it or not, vegetarianism is going to make a comeback. Like it or not, cooking at home is going to come back. Like it or not, you know, cleaning hands, instead of shaking hands, doing namaste is coming back. All sorts of things that we did, you know, cleaning our feet and hands before entering the house. All these things are happening now. So, you know, that's how the world is headed. Let us make use of this opportunity to, you know, show the world the way.
Perfect. I think, you know, a few other speakers we had earlier also, including Abhijit, you know, there was a view that we need to seriously look at Chanakya's model, Arthashastra, and that has answers for almost all our problems now. Whereas the Nehruvian, you know, philosophy of socialism has transformed into another, you know, in different ways in the current regime also. Those have to go, is, you know, general consensus among many people. But I think, let's see, I mean, people like you and, you know, the intellectual fraternities throwing ideas at the government, how far are they responsive? I believe it depends on the karma of the country itself. We hope they listen to it.
Yes, yes.
And thank you, Sree. I think we have far exceeded the time that I have had taken of you. It's now 2 hours 45 minutes. So I thought we'll just finish it in 2 hours, but we have you know, overshot it by another 45 minutes.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Very good set of questions, and I hope that we have made some progress in trying to define what our needs are. And in all my methods, you know, you don't need to go ask anybody for money. You can do it within. We can dig within ourselves to come out with this. That is the most important thing that I wanted to bring out in this talk.
Excellent. I think, I mean, your presentation was pretty crisp and pretty, you know, what do you say, concise. And it was actually, people could, even, you know, simple people could understand it. I think what you said is right. We need to move up the chain now. We need to take the technology to the next level. And we need to really, you know, try and protect our interests in the face of what's going to happen to yuan, dollar, you know, the world turmoil. I think the best way to do it is to go back to our roots and be, you know, true Bharatiyas.
Absolutely. See, India never went and fought a war. Never. It was always self-contained. It was, and it converted almost half the world without shedding a drop of blood. It was all because the other person understood the value that this was bringing and went ahead and voluntarily did that. Even today, many people in mainland China say that I'm a Buddhist and they want to do their Pitru Karma. You can't do it in China. You have to do it outside. Only when you are outside can you do all these things. So lots of, you know, constraints like this have been imposed on people. But, you know, in terms of thought, simple living and high thinking that was invented in India, that continues to be practiced in India, and that will flourish. And let's hope that we give that as a gift to the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think simple living and high thinking, that is the punchline. I think let's all get there. And thank you, Sree, and thank you, Lakshmanan Garu, thank you, Rammohan Garu, thank you, everybody else who's on the panel. We hope that you have good takeaways from here, and hopefully, collectively we'll be able to try and think in these lines. Thanks a lot. Namaste to all of you.
Namaskaram. Yeah.
And Bharat Mata ki Jai.